Coding overloaded. What? I messed something up already. Let's see. Start. Okay. Does this work? Let's see. Once it starts playing. Hello, hey everybody. How's it going? I'm live with the man, the legend, Ross Scott, the creator and starter of Stock Killing Games, and a developer that you may not know. Would you just be able to introduce yourself for the people in the audience? Very cool. So I have so many questions for you. So I guess the first one is, for me, I started doing repair stuff in 2008, 2009, and I didn't talk about it until 2014, even though it was obvious it was a problem. It's just it never struck me as enough is enough. So for you, with games, because you've been talking about games and had your channel for a really long time, what was the moment for you where enough? Oh, people can't hear you. I suck. 1 second. Oh, you piece of. Oh, I am such a fucking failure at this. Okay. 1 second. Yeah, I suck. Washed up streamer. Washed up streamer. That you are not wrong. You're not wrong. Okay. Yes. Washed up. Okay, that was not a. Yeah, nobody. Okay, so my apologies. Nobody heard the introduction. So, yes. So, can you just introduce yourself for people who may not know who you are?
Sure.
And
Hey,
pretend
my
that you
name
didn't
is.
already just do this.
Yeah, sure. My name is Matthew. I'm an indie game developer. I make a game called all the times.
Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. Okay, so take two. So my question for Ross, thank you for everything that you've been doing for this, is I started talking about the right to repair stuff in 2014, but I had been doing this professionally from 2007. I had my own company from 2009, and it's hard for me to pinpoint the moment at which I said, like, enough is enough. And when I look back on it, I wonder, how did I not talk about it sooner? So for you, what was the moment? What was the enough is enough? Like, because we've all seen what's been going on with ownership, not just games, but everything. So what was the enough is enough for you?
Well, it's kind of a spectrum. I mean, I made a big video on it in 2019, hoping that would kind of stir up enough people to do something or try to organize things, because I fish out of water. I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew there was a problem, so I thought if I could put that on blast, if people could. But I had several videos prior to that pointing out the problem. I think the real enough is enough was last year, because with the crew shutdown, I almost look at that like imagine a sniper just waiting and waiting and waiting for a shot, and then somebody pops his head up. That's kind of how I viewed the crew. So if that opportunity hadn't come, I might not have been able to do anything. But it checked off a lot of boxes for being able to act on it.
All right, now, when I did a video on Stop Killing Games, the first video going over the specifics of the campaign, I believe last July or last August, and after I did some videos on the crew and Ubisoft's idea of not owning games. And clearly, one of the things I realized looking back on my own video is that I misunderstood elements of it. So one of the elements that I wanted to ask you about is, when I did that video, I was talking about pirate software, talking about live service games, and whether or not this covers live service games versus other types of games. And I was reading this piece from the initiative that I don't think I understand. It says, because in my video I said I don't think this covers live service games based on what it says. So when I scroll down, it says, we are invoking Article 17, squiggly thing 1, I really should learn what the squiggly thing is, of the fundamental rights of the European Union. No one may be deprived of his or her possessions except in the public interest and in cases under the conditions provided for by law, subject to fair compensation. And it also says this initiative calls to require publishers that sell or license video games to consumers. So for me, that very obviously covers the cases of somebody says, you pay $70 for a game, and then 5 years later the game stops working. That's complete bullshit. Like, to me, I own that game. You sold it to me. But I got my Game Boy in 1994. I stopped playing games a lot around 2006-07. I played Dota a few times, but I don't even think you could call what I do gameplay because I'm so bad at it. But I don't really understand the economy of live service games or how they work. So I guess my first question, just to clear up my own misunderstanding of the movement, is what do you define? Like, what is a live service game in this context or definition, and does this apply to it?
Well, yeah, it especially covers live service games is the way to look at it. I mean, live service games, it's kind of a nebulous term where it can encompass a few things, but I find the thing that really binds it together, actually, from your previous guest, like I only caught snippets, but I caught that part where you said I was defining it as a game that runs in a data center and, and not on your system or on your console. Or so, and because you can still have online games that just run on your computer or console that you connect to somebody else out there, you're good, or you host it, they connect to you. But the live service model tends to you connect to the company and then they have their own server management. And usually what comes with that are the microtransactions where people buy skins or stuff like that, or they often have frequent updates. Not necessarily, but that tends to be the broad way to define it.
So the person I was talking to yesterday, one of the things he said is that that if I were to search for something like, let's say, Call of Duty 6 Black Ops, this is technically a live service game, even though it says that it's $50 at Walmart. But it says it connects to the internet to download things. But it does, like me as an average everyday consumer, if I'm looking at this Call of Duty Black Ops for Xbox Series S or X, like I would not think that this is something that could be turned off later. And he was saying just about any game that connects to the internet is live service.
Well, it's yes and no. I mean, for what it's worth, me who's probably played 100 times more games than you have, I wouldn't necessarily know. I would have to go and research. It's like, okay, is there an offline mode? Is there, like, if it's a new game has online, sometimes it's clear, other times it's not. And you have to research. You don't even know almost until you buy the game. What was the other thing you said? God, my brain's a bit fried today. What was the other part?
Sir. So like when Pirate Software's big offense on this was that I don't, if this
if it connects to the internet, it's a live service game. It all depends. There was a big game a couple of years ago now, I guess, Baldur's Gate 3. That has a big, wide single-player campaign, but you can play it co-op with a friend over the internet, and that is not a live service game. But you can play online with somebody. Now, those types of games are a little bit rarer than they used to be. Maybe a lot rarer. It's hard to say, but there are reasons publishers move everything online to a server they control. But our whole issue is that you can't just leave it that way once you're done with it. You have to, package it up. One analogy I've made is like if you had like a mining company, you can't just tear up everything and then leave and have like the wastewater running off into the river and just leave the whole place trashed. You have to have a plan for cleaning up once you're done mining.
So like there are games like this where it's $50 and it says it connects to the internet, and then there are games where it's like you pay $5 or $10 a month for the game. So my confusion when I made that video, and my confusion admittedly with the whole idea of a live service game, is like when I pay $50 for something, I assume maybe ignorantly, but the way I think it should be, is that I fucking own it. I paid $50 for it. Whereas if something's $5 or $10 a month, I assume that this is a service, and I don't like shit being a service all the time. I don't like that everything is turning into a service, but I don't have the same concept that I own it. So how does the initiative deal with those two different ones? Because that was the main point of confusion that I had.
Well, another point of confusion for you is I would call both of those games live service games. Both the ones you pay money per month and the ones you just pay the $50 and then right. The good news about those is there are not that many of the kinds that you pay every month currently still kicking in the game world. I think we went through a list. We found about 13 total out of hundreds. It's usually kind of the old guard ones that have been doing this since like the mid 2000s or something, that they have like this long-term fan base that they can get away with it because it's like a lifestyle for the people playing.
So like, what are some examples of games where they're live service but you paid once kind of thing? Just so because I don't understand the business model.
Destiny 2, Diablo 4, Diablo 3, let's see, The Division. It's a smattering there. Even one of the Need for Speed games, actually. Whereas the other half of that would be something like World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy 14 or sort of a blurry in between there is like EVE Online. That's where you pay money every month and then you get all these benefits from that game. Now, the way that comes into play is we're actually going after all of them in the initiative. However, there's a real high chance we'll lose on the ones where you pay every month, because I mean, I don't think it's a good deal myself, but those fall under the category of a service. Yeah, like you said, you understand that. So like the average consumer gets that, and that really is kind of in line where they tell you up front, okay, you get to play for 30 days or you get to play for 6 months, and then you got to renew, or that's it, you're cut off. Well, that's how services work. Same with Netflix, same with your internet provider, stuff like that.
Yeah, and like I despise services in this manner.
I do
don't
too.
like. I hate when you take something. I shouldn't say hate. I intensely dislike when you take something that is supposed to be that you have the ability to own and you turn it into a service because you technically have the ability to. That annoys the shit out of me. But I think like there's a difference between somebody being honest and saying, pay $20 a month for my game. It's awesome. It's worth it, bro. Versus like some asshole saying it's $50 to buy this. We're gonna hope that we can keep the servers propped up by all the microtransactions and activity in the game and things like that. Because or like when Thor would say Pirate Software, I gotta stop calling him Thor. I'm not gonna call him fucking Viking. But when he says something like we keep it up until the game is no longer profitable, what does that technically mean? Because like when I look at a game like this, it looks like a game where I paid once. I mean, it looks like a game where I pay once for it. Is it just when people stop choosing to buy it, so I'm not getting that income stream of people paying $50 a month for it anymore? Like, what is that about? When somebody says that when the game is no longer profitable, what does that mean?
It means whatever they want it to mean. That's part of the problem with this, is that the range on this, it's all over the place. Yeah, the shortest one I've found was 8 days for a game called The Culling 2, where it lasted 8 days. All right, we're taking it down. We can't run it anymore. However, they did give refunds for that. The shortest one that no refunds I know of was ironically called Lawbreakers, which lasted a year. But on the flip side, there's a game called Guild Wars, been going on over 20 years. So if you bought a copy in 2005, you still have to connect to their servers. It still works. It never stops. So there's no standards at all on this. It's, like I said, it's whatever they want it to be, which might be a problem under the law in some countries.
Because my bias while going through all of this is just to be clear, even if there are an insane amount of reasons why it 100% makes sense to have everything be a service, and even if we lived in a world where you would just be taking TNT to the entire industry of video gaming by doing something like this, my bias is I still don't even care, and my bias is that towards that populist just blow it up thing, or if you're at the point where to have a gaming industry you need any of this stuff, I would just say like that is my bias, which is why I wanted to talk to people who had going on the other side of it. But
yeah, well, mine's close. I look at it like, to me, as someone who appreciates games, the worst thing that can happen to games is a game you like being destroyed forever. So I mean, I think the only thing worse would be something like employee abuse, but that's not really something the customers see so much.
So one of my fears was when some people said call him by his name, James. I didn't call him James because I never even took the time to know what his name was. I mean, when Pirate Software, whatever the hell, when he was saying I would agree with this if it didn't apply to live service games, and you said that this is am I correct when you said that this is like a small number of games that we found where you pay a certain amount of money every month to play the game? Like that's
well, live service includes that whole spectrum. It includes those monthly ones, and it includes the ones you pay once, like the Call of Duty that you mentioned, but you still have to connect to them. That's why the language, that's been half the battle, honestly, just trying to get clear terminology. But other thing I was going to say is about how you hate the service games and stuff like that. You're not the only one. That's one of the reasons I can kind of tolerate that if we lose on it, because our only argument would be for cultural preservation, which doesn't have nearly the laws that consumer rights do, is because we've been here before. In the mid-2000s, a bunch of companies were making World of Warcraft clones or trying to get on the MMO bandwagon. Almost all of them died out, or they went to a free-to-play model or something else. If the market could handle it, publishers would be shoving that down our throats. But the problem is most people are like you, and that they're like, I don't want to pay $15 a month for this game. This is one game. I want to play different ones and play this at my own pace, not feel rushed to get my money's worth each month, that sort of thing.
So when you were saying that many of these games would apply as live service, but let's say we take games that are A, would apply as live service, and B, explicitly say you're paying $5 a month for this. That's a small number of games, right?
It's still all live service. Okay, well, I think what you're
Yeah, like a live service,
okay,
but like you have
there's
to pay every month.
subscription service, and then there's, I guess, non-subscription live service games. Like, this would be the way to put it.
But
I could give a developer example.
yeah, I was just kind of
'Cause
curious
I,
about how many of them are like this type of subscription of subscription you pay every month live service game where it's not even like a microtransaction where I pay once, but you expect me to give you $1 or $2 or $5.
Okay,
a month
so
for the game.
you for the ones that connect online, you want to know about how many you have to pay every month?
Yeah, like approximately, just because
3%.
okay, so very low percent. So when
Yeah.
when Pirate Software was saying I would want this to not apply to live service games, I'm imagining that if this movement said, well, this does not apply if you charge a monthly fee and call it a live service game, and you're upfront about not owning it. The problem I would have with that is I would imagine every company would then go over and just say we're going to call our game a service now too, and everything would transition to that.
Well, again, that's what it comes back. They tried to do that already. It didn't work because the market's too small for it. People were. What happens then is you have companies saying, "Oh, they're going for all this. They're going for this crowded demographic that most of the players are going to lose. We're going to release our game like Elden Ring or the Baldur's Gate thing. That hey, you pay money up front, you get a great long game. Customers start moving towards that, and then the studios doing that get the money instead, or most of it."
Okay, now I understand. When you said that's about 3% of those games, now that makes a lot more sense to me. So thank you. So the first thing I would want to go into is what are the largest misconceptions of this movement that you've dealt with over the past 10 months? So like what
Okay, yeah, I guess the top, greatest hits.
Because I've had my own just based on reading, like not even understanding the
first one
difference in
is
games.
that we're asking companies to support these games forever, and we're not. They can end them anytime. They just have to do it in a responsible way. Another one. Big one is that the initiative is not retroactive. So, it can't be even if we wanted to. So it might, if it all passed, let's say it goes into effect like 2028 or something like that. Well, anything between now and then, there's no penalty. It's only after that that the penalties might start emerging. Let's see. Another one is that we're not asking. Well, this one's kind of nuanced, but we aren't asking publishers directly to give up any intellectual property. There's kind of two levels of that. One is that, if you buy a game like, okay, you mentioned Call of Duty. If you buy that game, you don't own the rights to the Call of Duty franchise. You buy that just individual instance that you can play it on your machine. Just for you or friends that are right there, that sort of thing. So that wouldn't change at all. The other thing is the initiative, I think it's actually kind of clever in this way. We're not saying to these companies like, hey, you need to release your server binaries, or hey, you have to release the source code, something like that. Because if we did that, that might actually run up against other copyright laws, saying, well, hey, you can't just demand this. This is their intellectual property. So instead, what we're doing is we're focusing on the outcome, saying, hey, you sold a working game to a customer. You need to leave it in the working state once you shut it down. And that leaves maximum flexibility to the developer or the publisher how they want to handle that. Now, that probably means they will have to release a server binary or make it work, peer-to-peer or something. But since we're not specifying that, that gets us out of like a whole lot of not loopholes, but problems, I guess.
When you
if I lost you, we can go back.
no, that was helpful. Sorry, I've had a horrible headache for a while. Hey, cat, no, I'm busy. Don't step on that. Cat, no. Hey, kitty goes over.
This should be the intro part of the video here.
Kitty, no, I put the audio interface on the side of the chair, and he can't sit on the side on that because then there'll be no sound. No, kitty, no. Sit over here. Over here. Kitty, over here.
Is that same cat as the one I've got on the shirt over here?
Yes, and also this guy has an awesome shirt. Take a look at it. Oh, that's the Clinton from that's a 11. Wow, Clinton was young when that came out. Okay, Clinton, you sit over here. Sit over here.
I also have the mouse pad too.
Sit over here. Sit over here. Sit over here. This is people asked during that BWE video, why did the sun go down while you were doing it? And it's like, fucking cat. Okay, going back to the biggest misconception. So when one of the things that's software developer had said is, you have client software and you have server software, and they're both separate intellectual property. And to be clear, like I have the Stephen Kinsella view of intellectual property. I think that intellectual property always gets invoked. I think intellectual property law protections wind up being invoked at the worst possible times, and it's often selective. When I deal with industry lobbyists with right to repair, they will be as libertarian, anarcho-capitalist, anti-regulation as humanly possible. And then the moment I bring up, okay, how about this? Like, let's just get rid of Section 1201 of the DMCA so we can break digital locks. I'll be like, no, intellectual property. So I'm not an intellectual property maximalist by any means. But what would you say to somebody who says, well, if you're asking for, let's say, a binary, not the source code, but the binary for a server to be released so that somebody could run those microtransactions at home, would that be asking for something that's either copyrighted or intellectual property? Like, I'm not saying that that's even wrong.
It's nuanced. If we asked for it directly, it might be. But the thing is, it's like we're saying, okay, well, you don't have to do that. You just have to leave the game working. And then they probably will release the binary on their own at that point because it's their decision how they want to handle that. But there's only so many paths they can go on it. But since we don't specify which one works, like the analogy I make is if you have a stop sign and you don't the driver doesn't have to use the regular brakes. They could use the handbrake. They could try to coast to a stop, but they have to stop by that stop sign. So it's like that. You're not specifying exactly how they do it, but it's the end result that they have to hit. And for the intellectual property, if people are still, someone in there watching is still getting steamed over that, one way to look at it is we're actually not asking for anything that hasn't already been sold to them. What we're asking for is to remove the ability of the publisher to take that back without any fault to the customer. Now, if the customer was doing something like trying to hack all their servers and cheat everything, yeah, they could probably still kick them off because then that's with cause. They're violating it in a way. But if the customers just wanted to play the game and then now they lose it forever, well, that's not with cause. So, but by having that provision that they can't just take it back, that means some more responsibilities fall on them that they have to realize, oh, wait, we're going to have to figure out a way to wind this down once we're done so the customer can continue running it and we don't have to keep supporting it forever.
I'm looking at the questions to see if there's anything somewhat good.
Yeah, no problem.
I don't want to be that guy, but you're literally
that.
saying we are enforcing developers to release their IP. We're just not allowing them to not have us give us your IP.
They're not allowing them to take it back. See, that's the thing. They have to sell some rights to the customer for the customer to even play the game. They have to access some of it. So we're basically saying, yeah, you can't take that back afterwards unless it was, gross violation of policies, that sort of thing.
Yeah, just to add a little bit to this, we're not asking them to release, private keys and secrets in their server binary. Like, they can strip a lot of that stuff out before they give it to the game. So a lot of games will have like an anti-cheat or, proprietary code or some kind of other solution that's only needed for millions of players and only needed in certain cases. What Ross is asking for is kind of more a stripped down version of that is not trying to violate existing IP. And I guess that leads into a debate about is a binary technically code, but we're not really asking for source code or anything like that.
Well, we're not asking for it specifically is the thing. See, we force them to make that decision, essentially, how they want to handle it, which would very likely be in binaries.
Yeah, and it may lead to a certain, if having these services in the game makes it so difficult to actually release a binary because you don't have a license to this, you don't have a license to that, and you can't run this database in this server. I'm very curious how this would have, what kind of game development decisions would be made going into the future. Would they say, okay, fuck it, we're not going to use this type of library if we're going to be restricted by it? And I want to see that discussion. I
can expand a little bit on that one.
Yes, sir. I would love to hear from.
When developing a game, we also hate having a single piece of code that can kind of take our whole game out. So a lot of sections of our game will have, for in C++, for example, you have defines where you can say, hey, if this SDK is not available, the game will still work, but it'll kind of take a fallback path. So a lot of these, like even with a really complicated server like a microservice architecture, they often expand on things like analytics and anti-cheat and payments and trying to have servers have up 99% uptime, for example, or host 10 million players at once. We're not asking you to kind of give up all that with when doing the binary, but more so developers will have a way to compile their binary with certain flags turned off, right? A good example I can think of is Unreal Engine uses a library called Oodle, which is kind of like a proprietary compression library. You can still strip that out while still retaining the game. The game may be slightly worse, maybe it's slightly bigger, but the game is kind of still in a semi-functional state. And I think we're not really going for perfect, we're going for functional state, right, Russ?
Yeah, Matt actually explained some of this to me earlier. If I got it right, if we could dumb it down a bit from what he said, I was actually pleasantly surprised talking to him, because so much of this, when people talk about all the problems with, converting this to an end of life build or something, it sounds like so much of it isn't needed. Where all the problems are on the complexity, like if they have this running on Amazon Web Service or Google Stacks, because examples he gave were things like cross-region save functionality. We don't need that. Anti-cheat. We don't need that. Payment information. We don't need that. Analytics. He mentioned 99% uptime, crash reports, voice chat, failover. He gave all these examples. Yeah, you could strip all of this out and we still would get basically the game. That's all stuff related either to running the business side of it, or like he said, if you were trying to have 10 million players on at the same time or managed. Whereas we're looking, I think for almost 98% of games, I think even 50 would be more than enough. So.
Yeah, so a good example might be, for example, we have a 100K a month spent on AWS, right? So we have microservices, we have a really complicated architecture. But, Amazon Aurora database, for example, has a MySQL alternative. It's not as good. It maybe can't do 10 million players at once, but it may be enough to preserve the game. And developers really like open standards. Because if you had your whole tech stack be Amazon exclusive, Amazon increases their prices next year, and you're really in a bad spot as a developer. So a lot of concept, for example, is infrastructure as code, where you can export the backend as kind of like a Docker file, right? That someone could run potentially. It may not be cheap to run, but someone could run it potentially on a PC and be able to run, say, a 100-player server. They may not get 10 million players, but the game will be preserved in a state that people can still play.
There was a document I wanted to look at because I thought the same thing, but I just want, if you have a minute for me to find and bring it up. It was going over all those different services, and I thought the same thing when I was looking at all the different services where there's an issue with a license for this, or there's an issue with not being able to give away a binary for that. One of my questions was, why do you need a lot of these particular services? And I just want to get, if you have a minute for me to bring that document
Yeah,
up.
Sure. If I could.
If the cat was on this.
I mean, there's more nuance, I'm sure, but really, as the player who bought the game, we're really just looking for two things on this: being able to run the game and have people be able to connect to it. That's kind of it, all this extra stuff, that's for while it's being supported, really.
Yeah, I just wanted to read some of these because one second, sorry,
Yeah, sure. Well, another misconception, but while you're looking it up, is that with source code, this is one that's a little nuanced. The initiative is not asking for source code. However, one compromise, if it gets to the EU Commission and they say, well, we need more options, we would consider is if, let's say they say, okay, well, we can't really give you a working game for all of these, but maybe some developers, as an alternative, could give you the equivalent of repair instructions, and they are willing to release source code or documentation. But even then, that would be just an alternative that gets, compromised down to, which would still do a lot.
Yeah, there was a game called Command & Conquer Generals that released source code to the community for modding, but there's no way you have to completely release source code to better preserve.
Yeah, no, that's not option. Required.
It might save costs. Like you might say, hey, there's nothing secret in the source code. It might be cheaper for us to release it, but you don't really have to if you don't want to.
It won't be required under any scenario. It won't be mandatory under anything that we're proposing. So.
Here we go. I found my list. Yes. Also, Command and Conquer. I remember playing Command and Conquer 2 in 1997 on my Pentium 2 with 232 megahertz. Very good
James
game.
Earl Jones.
Yes. Or let's see, like a photon or mirror networking for real-time multiplayer networking, Vivox for voice chat integration, Discord for social integration, game analytics or Unity analytics for player behavior. A lot of these different things. I don't. Twilio for SMS.
Yeah, analytics. Why the hell does the?
I don't care about it.
Why the hell does the player need that after end of life?
Yeah,
know?
And like, okay, I imagine the answer to this is very obvious, but I'll just give you the opportunity to answer just so it's not ambiguous. Do you care about anti-cheat being a problem in this game?
No,
when it's
of course
done?
not.
Because like there's so much rootkitting shit that you need to have good anti-cheat. And
Yeah, well, then what you do is just only let your friends in, who aren't gonna come in and hack your system. I mean, this is something that happened. I mean, this is kind of how online gaming was a lot of time back in the 90s and early 2000s. You'd host a server, people would come in, and if there was cheating, the people running the server would kind of block that, user permanently or something. But hey, if even that was too dangerous, then fine, just get people to connect.
Yeah, a lot of these services, if they were ripped out, I mean, I can imagine how this would be difficult if you did not architect the game for that, which is why, if going forward, I imagine it would be designed differently. And I'm okay with it being something that's designed differently going forward, because I don't like the idea there are people that would say something like, well, this is just a Trojan horse to get rid of the entire concept of services or cloud services in general. Because if the game is connecting to the cloud to work, or it's a live service game, and you're saying that you have to provide the what's necessary to make it work, if I need to provide a server binary to make that work, then what's the difference between, let's say, that and somebody asking you to give away what makes Gmail run?
Yeah, so a good example to differentiate that one would be Amazon offers a lot of proprietary services and code where you're paying them to manage the infrastructure for you, right? With losing that, we wouldn't get 100% uptime, we wouldn't get crash reports and stuff like that. But for a game that's end of life, it's a compromise willing to make. And so regarding self-hosting, Amazon discontinues services too, right? You might be using an anti-cheat and it might get discontinued. So as a developer, usually you kind of program around this. For example, we switched from BattleEye to Easy Anti-Cheat at one point and swapped back. And it's a lot of work, right? But if you have your game locked down to just one service, if that anti-cheat's not working out for you, swapping it out is going to be a pain. With microservices, a lot of these things can be easier to kill because it's just a service by itself. You can kind of shut that down without, destroying the rest of your monolithic app.
So can you tell me, as a game developer, what your day-to-day is like? What portion of the game development process are you working in, just so I know if the questions I'm going to ask are going to make sense?
Yeah, so I'm company owner, but I'm also a programmer kind of founder. So I'm doing a lot of the game's code. I do a lot of infrastructure. For example, I have a bunch of super microservers in my basement in case, Amazon goes down or whatever. Like you have that meme where Amazon goes down, right? We kind of also run a replacement to Steam, so we do game purchases and things like that as well. And with our game, we're kind of planning on having an end-of-life plan. And it's going to be tricky. For example, like even if you give someone a server binary, the server has to connect somewhere to have a server list. But there's kind of common ways around that. So the main concern I have is the arguments. James is a really smart person, by the way, and I really respect his experience. But some of these arguments make out that games are kind of impossible to preserve and infinitely complicated. But with kind of modern tech like Kubernetes and Docker, some of this, we're talking to someone, Lewis, who had a pfSense router at one point, right? Which is like really complicated router setup. But there's ways to figure this out, right? And we're just looking for a reasonable implementation.
Yeah, actually, maybe I'm completely off here, but you're mentioning a server list. Would it even be an issue if there wasn't a server list, but you just gave your friend your IP address or something?
Or just have a direct connect box, right? So
yeah.
Maybe there's chunks of the games, like maybe achievements don't work, or maybe matchmaking doesn't work. But if you can direct connect to somebody and get into multiplayer, 90% of the game is going to be accessible that way.
Yeah, we're not. Not. Go ahead.
Sorry, no, you first. I talked over you.
Okay. Well, yeah, but I started to forget what I was saying.
Oh yeah, sorry about that. Can you walk me through, like, before this was passed and after it's passed, how would this change the way you go about developing a game the owner of this game company and also a programmer? Like, what are the things that you would think through differently so that you could be compliant? And can you go through some of what the opposition has said is not true in terms of how much more difficult this would make things for you? I want to understand how, as a small indie developer, how your process would be different as a result of the law passing.
Yeah, so I can cover two different scenarios. One where I would be making a new game from scratch, another one would be converting an existing game, right? So if I'm making a brand new game from scratch, I would be thinking about an end of life plan. As in, when you sell your game, say you're selling your game for $30, usually there's math of like, well, $10 is going to go to the server costs for 10 years, right? So each player that buys your game for $30 may cover so many hours of server costs, right? So I'd be thinking about, okay, how many copies am I going to sell? What's my server cost going to be? And I'd be figuring out a plan of, okay, if we had a shutdown, it also might be I get hit by a bus, right? And my game wouldn't be preserved, right? So I'd also be worried about that. I'm thinking about, how do we have people still be able to play the majority of the game? And it would lead to me to making different decisions while coding. I might code my microservices slightly differently. I might code my backend slightly differently. I might have some defines in the game to take out certain features with feature flags. And I'll be communicating to my community, hey, we're going to support this for like maybe the next couple of years, but here's kind of the planned end of life date, right? So at the very least, players would know what would happen if we end of life our game. And, we would have, we already have community servers, so we'd better release a server executable. We'd have to disable some features like the server list or matchmaking, but we'd do some tests to make sure it works, right? Now, as a developer, we already do local testing, which is super important. So we're reusing a lot of the existing code we have. Like, if Amazon goes down, we still have local test code, so people would still do work, right? So a lot of that code would be reused. Now, if I was converting an existing game, this is a lot harder, but I'd look for kind of like open source alternatives. For example, if we're using Amazon Aurora, I might look at MySQL, and I might, usually there's a thing called a driver pattern, where we'll have a fallback for our game to still work if that specific service is not available. So I anticipate it might be maybe a couple of weeks of work and a couple of developers' time, if that were the case. But depending on how complicated your game is, we're only trying to preserve, like Ross said, a small chunk. So I wouldn't be preserving anti-cheat or anything like that.
Well, I have a question. Do you think that's the sort of thing that might get easier as time went on, too, if it was known as a law?
Yeah, so if Epic Games from Unreal Engine is seeing this, and they have code in the engine, they may change how the engine works to make this easier to preserve, right? If you're the developer of Unity and you're using Proton Networking, the Proton Networking guys may create a layer to make this easier for their developers over the future. We also have the community who, got World of Warcraft working on their home computer somehow, right? The community is really dedicated to this stuff and finds ways to make this work, and they're going to help leverage a lot of things that would help make this an easy process. So it is complicated, and James was right. There is a lot of things to be concerned about that is valid. My argument would mainly be that we have some tools to fix this already, and we're not trying to preserve, all these really complicated, AWS stacks we don't need. We're trying to do a smaller version of that, which I think is possible and affordable to do.
Okay, so one of my questions there is, I apologize for if I missed it. When you said it may take an extra 1 or 2 weeks, are you talking about an extra 1 or 2 weeks to redo an existing game? Again, I know this is not retroactive, but are you saying that? Or you're talking about it would take an extra 1 or 2 weeks to figure out, going forward, what services will I use so that I am in compliance, I can be easily in compliance and then never have to worry about it again?
Yeah, so for my game, because I have designed my way kind of, we have community servers already, so we wouldn't be starting from scratch. I anticipate it could be 1 or 2 weeks to at least get the direct connect feature in Ross is talking about, right? We just have to remove some sections of code that connect to servers and, embed certain things in the game. But for a really complicated game, if we're talking like League of Legends, for example, this may be a monumental effort that takes a couple of months, right? So it all depends on the game's code. But if you follow the best practices as a developer, you're thinking about this thing already with your standard programming. So
Yeah,
It's not going to be too extreme, but yeah.
because even if it was something that, let's say you did have some sort of hyper complicated system, what was confusing me, and again, this is just me not being a programmer developer at all, is when I set up MailCow, I typed docker compose up-d, I downloaded a YAML file, and now I have 17 different servers or something running right on there, and they're all talking to each other the way it was specified in the file, and it makes running a very, very complicated system as easy as typing a couple of things. So I was curious, like, hypothetically speaking, even if it is all very, very complicated, if you think of that ahead of time when you're designing the game, why can't it be designed in a way where I just type, where I type this and it's all up and running immediately on my system?
So
that was
yeah. So the good example you said with the YAML file, that we call this infrastructure as code. So your YAML file defines exactly how many servers you need, the login server, the database server, and so it's very true that Docker Compose up will literally make your server work. Now, to do James's argument some justice, if you have an AWS stack, it may be a little bit more complicated, but we don't think it's like impossible. You know what I mean? We don't think it's like incredibly difficult or impossible. Like I said, you may need to write some YAML files, but YAML files are kind of the best practice for this kind of thing, if that makes sense.
So if you've made a complicated game, how much time would it take you to, if let's say all these services said, up yours, we're not going to give you anything for this, we're getting out of the gaming market altogether. Let's just say the worst possible case scenario were to occur. How long would it take you for your company to just figure out what could I use for the next game that would be compliant with this?
So assuming your developers are already familiar with infrastructure as code, this may be like a week of work, right? But if you're doing this from scratch, it may be something where you need to teach people the YAML file and teach people how to configure the servers. But having the YAML file set up will mean you can swap to Azure if Amazon goes down, or Amazon has bad pricing, you can swap these.
So it makes migration easier, which is something that you should have to begin with anyway. Because one thing I've heard is like these companies don't have documentation. You can't. I mean, you have documentation because you're crazy. And then my thought there is, I paid for this shit. After paying for this shit, like this, one of the reasons that it would be difficult for you to allow me to keep using it is because you'd have to give me the ability to run the server, but we don't even have the documentation for it. And it's just, for me, it's like, that sounds like a you fucking problem. Not you as in you individually, but you get the idea.
Yeah, I agree. So with documentation, developers that don't write documentation risk their game going offline, or someone gets hit by a bus and their game's dead. Maybe halfway through their life cycle before it's not even supposed to go, right? So you probably should write some documentation, and you probably should follow some best practices. But I would feel bad if I had no documentation selling a game to my customers saying, oh yeah, this will be online for the next 5 years. If I had no documentation and no way to keep the game online. You know what I mean?
I'm not going to use names because I don't want to use names. It's just, as a company that does data recovery for like the last, at least at a lab level, for like the last 5 or 7 years, the amount of Fortune 500 companies that have absolutely no disaster recovery solution and no backups at certain areas would absolutely fucking astound you. But it's
and
it shouldn't be like that.
There are solutions available that have cheap backup options. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it seems like I'm interested in the practical part of it, because I understand the principled argument, which is you can't tell me how to make my software if I want to make my software using this service and whatever. But like I wanted to hear that practical stuff from people who are actually making games every day, which is how much more difficult would it be for you to choose a different type of service. And one of the arguments I've heard is, well, the people that are making these services that may not be willing to give out that type of binary or that type of licensing, who would just tell you, screw you, we're not going to give you something that's a compliant solution. They have spent 5 or 10 years of their life literally focusing on this like one teeny tiny area of the game. And this is my own ignorance. I didn't realize that there was something called Speed Tree. Do you know what that is? I didn't even know that you could. Oh, yeah. There's a service
for making trees. For sure, right?
Like, I didn't realize that there's a service for making trees in games. I'm not saying that they're part of the problem, but just like the fact that there are this many different types of things that you have. Like there's literally a service to make trees inside of games. I didn't realize just how much of game development was like using all these different Legos that are licensed out from other people versus making in-house, especially if you're an indie. Not a service. You get the idea. It's a product, not a service. Something that you didn't do yourself, because somebody in the chat said SpeedTree is not a service. But
yeah, so luckily with SpeedTree, I mean, I think SpeedTree is like a subscription in some cases. Luckily, Unreal Engine pre-buys it for us and includes it in the engine for free, and you can kind of get a lot of benefits on that way. But a lot of these services have open alternatives. Like, if you don't like MySQL, you can use Postgres. Like, it's not going to be the end of the day and ruin your game. Sometimes you might even switch services because one's underperforming. So you might, for example, we're using Amazon Aurora and we're looking at switching to Postgres because we get better performance. And there's, documented migration strategies, and this thing is a lot more simple kind of than it made out to be. I'm sure if you had underskilled workers and no documentation, this would still be a nightmare. But if you're following best practices, it's not really as bad as one would think.
And your experience.
Also on the
you go ahead.
Again, on the practicality, if I'm not hallucinating, I don't know if I mentioned it here, but another possible compromise with the EU Commission is the industry saying, no, we just can't do this. We wouldn't like it, but one could be to just grandfather in all existing games so that after 2028, then you have to do it. But if this is just too much of a nightmare for the industry, okay, fine. You were there first, you made your game the way you did. I mean, I think that removes a lot of excuses then.
Okay, yeah, because I'm asking all these questions because with right to repair, the idea is make available to us what you make available to your service center. So if you have a PDF of a schematic that's already available, I'm asking for the stuff that's already available, whereas here we would be asking you to make something that may not already necessarily. Yes, Mr. Clinton. I love that shirt. I have my mouse pad somewhere over here.
Got a schematic on the back.
Yeah, here, what makes, like with right to repair, I would be less sympathetic to anybody that says you can't apply it retroactively because I'm asking for the stuff that you already gave access to your own service centers to, which means it already exists. Like if you didn't make the documentation for your service center, which again, many companies will likely say.
Yeah, though you're probably running into that intellectual property tight-fisted mentality, probably like times 100, I would think, compared to what you've seen.
There's one particular company that wanted to make schematics available to me, but the license term, but they don't make the motherboard of the device. They pay somebody else to make the motherboard, and the person who made the motherboard does not allow them that because this is an interesting one. I probably shouldn't be saying because if you're smart and you've watched my channel for a long time, you know who I'm talking about. But there's a company that makes a device that then at one point was not making the schematic available to the device, and people said like, what the fuck? This is a right to repair friendly device. You're selling it based on right to repair principles, but they didn't make the motherboard to it. Somebody else made the motherboard to it. Now the company who's making the motherboard for them, they're not making a separate motherboard for every single company. They're like, if you're making the Wi-Fi circuit for a Samsung phone versus an LG tablet versus this desktop, you just Control-C, Control-V, Control-C, Control-V. And they were afraid that if the schematics got out, then it would be obvious that this company that's making the boards for these 5 companies literally just copied and pasted the same thing 5 times. And that they would all wind up going after each other for intellectual property theft, which was a very interesting one. But it's like, they said, I want to give you this. I would love to give you this. But if I give you this and you give it out, then I can get sued by somebody else who is technically doing the same thing that it was just a giant legal quagmire of mess. And yeah, with what you're saying, this makes sense, and I would prefer to see things developed in a way where, like, if somebody says it was developed this way, we use these services, so this is why I can't give it to you, I would then say, again, my bias from before is I don't care if this blows up the way a game is made, if it means that you actually get to keep the game, because long term, if one of these services doesn't work the exact same way it did before, if it takes a few extra days to figure out what services to use, I would much rather.
That's something I'm wondering. Maybe Matt covered it and I just missed it, but could you? This is speculating, but say you're making an online-only game now, like you pick whatever you want, like an arena shooter or something, and then let's say this goes into effect 5 years later. You wanted to make the exact same game, but just be compliant with having an end-of-life build. Do you think at some point it might end up being like about the same amount of work, or would it always be a little bit extra?
Yeah, I think if you're following these best practices and having documentation, it may actually not be that much more work, because internally as a developer, I'm scared of like, hey, is Amazon going to charge me more in storage, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of these standards, for example, like S3, the S3 API, you can go to Backblaze and say, hey, give me an S3 bucket. You can go to Azure and say, give me an S3 bucket. You could set up your own NAS in your basement that has an S3 bucket in it, right? So a lot of these standards make it easier to develop as a developer. And it's not that much work, especially over a long period of game development. It's probably a rounding error if you're doing the same documentation and the same best practices people are doing.
So somebody says, sorry, you go ahead. You first.
Okay, well, I was just want to add quick. Another thing I think would happen if this did pass, I think it might even be a gold rush to provide like middleware or package solutions, especially for the indie devs, to make this all easier on them. Because that's like, oh, now there's a new demand for any small company that needs this solution. Hey, we're going to sell ours first and advertise it's EU compliant and beat out our competition. So I think you would see a rush of options making it easier for smaller devs.
I hope that that would be the case, and I hope it would be something where there's like, because there's choice, and then there's choice. You know, for instance, Richard Stallman is a highly principled man on many of the open source things, and I've read at one point he's using a laptop that doesn't suspend when you close it. It doesn't have suspend functionality. It's about 5 or 6 years ago, because he can't find one with an open BIOS that has suspend. And there are many alternatives that are open source to the software that some people use that are closed source. It's just I use it, and then there's the free as in freedom and free as in free time. And I would hope that I'm not experienced as a video game developer, but I'm very curious what the gap is in terms of the software that would be made available under those license terms versus the stuff that's available as it is. Like, is it that much better that people would really prefer, developers would prefer to use the restrictive stuff just because it's better versus the new solutions that would come down the pipeline?
Well,
Yes.
before you
Oh, go on.
well, just real quick, I was saying the scenario I was describing, they wouldn't have a choice if they wanted to keep selling it, because then they would just keep losing every time somebody wants to sell in the EU market, and they might cut their sales by 40% or something like that. Yeah. Okay. So,
Yeah, so the difference, for example, we use Amazon Aurora database, right? We could use MySQL for free, right? Amazon does take care of a lot of complicated scaling stuff. For example, if we want our game to database to be replicated in the US and the EU and fail over while I'm asleep at 3 a.m. without me needing to wake up, that's an amazing feature, and I may want to use the Amazon alternative for that. But there may be a cost factor where that's too expensive, or a free alternative, right? So MySQL isn't horrible. Like, you can tweak it, configure it, make it good. It may have problems scaling to like 10 million concurrent players, but by the time you get to end of life, these open source alternatives are good enough, and most of the time they drop in replacements with some minor differences. So Amazon's worried about preserving the special sauce that is their extra value add, but the underlying database still works and people can still play the game. And it's not really a big deal to use an alternative.
So somebody said, I played a free PS3 game called Dust 514 that was discontinued. I bought their in-game in-game currency at a young age, and it didn't occur to me that the game was going away. I'm curious how you think this would all work with free games that have in-game buyables. Where are the Dust people at?
yeah, you would be covered if Dust had been released after the initiative, because it's a little trickier, but we get to the same place just about. Thing is, if the game is free, you're not entitled to the game directly because it's free. You know, there's no commerce. But once they start selling those microtransactions and they don't have an expiration date, well, when they shut down the game, then you just lost your microtransaction, you know, like your skin or your weapon or something. So in order to keep using those, that necessitates having the game. So it's kind of a back end around to it. In Australia, they have a legal term for this. It's, oh, geez, and I forgot the name of it. Okay.
I'm sorry for me being brain dead, being transferred to you. One thing we were talking about before getting on stream is that like every time you have a movement like this, you're going to spend 99% of your time on shit nobody notices, and then there's going to be one day where just every single news outlet wants to cover it, and it's like a treadmill. Like, you can't just say, okay, if I stop over here, I'll go back to where I was. You don't. If you get that news coverage and all that momentum, if you stop here, then you wind up below where you were. So I could only imagine how tired you are right now, because you need to ride the entire wave to get the million. And I want to read some of these questions here, but I also really wanted to for people who want to do this work in other areas, because there are people watching like Justin at Better Biomed that want to do this type of stuff you're doing in the medical industry, and many other people that really want to try and clean up their corner of the world. And I'm gonna have some questions related to that, because what I think you've done. Also, I apologize if what I said yesterday came off as unsensitive. It came from a place of like,
it's all right.
I am so sick and fucking tired of seeing the people that make the world a worse place live life on easy mode, and the people that want to make the world a better place live life on hard mode. So I interpreted what you were saying when we were talking in Discord last year as like, I want to do the noble thing. I'm not going to take people's money if it's not going to work right. I'm sorry.
You know what? You got me thinking about that while I was exercising today. I realized what I'm doing. The way I was looking at it is like, if I were to take like a bunch of people's money, unless I really had confidence and like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I can do this. Like, let's go for it. If I was just trying to figure it out, what I'm thinking is, you know what? I might not be in a state where I'm able to pull this off. And I realize it's a protective instinct to keep myself, like, I'm going to see myself as basically in debt then, like digging myself into a deeper hole because now I've taken all this money and I'm out of my league. And it's like, oh, well, now it's just basic. My heart might be in the right place, but I would view it as kind of wronging others and kind of. So I realize it's like a self-protection mechanism to keep myself from like digging my hole deeper. Is what that occurred to me only today. After you brought that up.
Yeah, I'm not going to keep you guys on forever. I'm just going to probably continue streaming afterwards to answer people's questions and stuff. But yeah, there's a story on campaign finance law in Massachusetts that of me breaking that in 2021 and learning it as it was actually a curious email from somebody saying, I'm sure that you started this thing already, and I'm like, and realizing that it happens. So I feel you with that stress and realizing, oh crap, you're in over your head. What do you do at that point? And in that moment of, well, okay, well, who do I find who can help? Because and I wanted to do a ballot initiative for right to repair because I was just sick and tired of showing up to the legislature and explaining everything and going over everything and dunking on the lobbyists. It made good entertainment. It made good YouTube going over this stuff like the game, but I wasn't actually getting anything done because nobody would vote on it. So I thought if I could just get people to vote on this directly, maybe there's a chance of something. And apparently, when you do a ballot initiative, you need to raise your money to a ballot committee, because if you don't raise your money to a ballot committee, then all the money you raised cannot be used for a ballot initiative. So I'm telling people I'm raising this money for a ballot initiative, but wait, oh my God, I pulled a Biden ballot initiative. Wow. Oh fuck. See, it can happen to you even if you're not 82. A ballot initiative. Wow. Okay, watching too many presidential elections. Anyway, ballot initiative. So a ballot initiative in the United States, in Massachusetts. Oh man, I just pulled a full Joe Biden. A ballot initiative in Massachusetts, most of them do not win unless they raise a certain amount of money. And the people that I were talking to said, yeah, most of the people raised somewhere around $6 to $25 million. The people who won it in the automotive industry raised about $25 million. You probably have to raise $25 million. I didn't know. I have no idea how much money I'm going to raise from people. Am I going to raise $25 million? Am I going to raise $1 million? Am I going to raise $5? So I said, if I raise enough to do a ballot initiative, I'll do a ballot initiative. And if I don't raise enough to do a ballot initiative, I'll raise enough to do traditional standard old lobbying. So I didn't know what I was going to do. If I raised $500, I'm not going to waste it and say I'm going to do a ballot initiative that I'm going to fail at. So I thought I was doing the responsible thing. But what I was actually doing is breaking campaign finance law, because by campaign finance law, if I'm running around saying, hey, I'm raising money for a ballot initiative and I'm putting it into a 501c4 bank account, I think, pretty sure that's illegal. Yeah, you can't use it that way.
Yeah, see, you tell me this, Louis, is this kind of like, you know how you have to be careful rescuing somebody who's drowning in the water when they're flailing around so they don't drag you down with them. I think you were kicking off my instinct when you for that.
Yes.
It's like, well, yeah, I'll get you a rope, but I'm not grabbing you the way you're acting with that. I'm not going down with you.
After that happened, I think that was the moment. I don't think I slept for a good 3 days because I realized, oh crap, what do I do? Well, obviously I'm going to do traditional lobbying, but what are all the side effects of this now? Now I went back to the people that were helping me with this campaign, and they were going to help me with a ballot initiative. They're the same people that were helping with Right to Repair in Massachusetts that got that ballot initiative passed. I found them, I was working with them, and they said, oh, well, we didn't think that you were going to raise that much to begin with. So we didn't go over that with you. And I'm like, you fucking kidding me? Are you serious? It took everything and every bone in my body to not drive to Massachusetts and just drive my car right through their building. I didn't. I can't even begin to tell you how much I wanted to just. Anyway.
I can't imagine how many pitfalls there are through the U.S. Political or legal system. I mean, that was the other thing. When you were describing, no, you're just getting started to punch through. See, I'm looking at it we're practically at the finish line almost. I mean, there's a lot afterwards. But that's so much more on the government side and the consumer protection side at that point. It's like we got the rocket launched, is the way I looked at it. For what you were describing, if it was something where you don't know how it's going to go, but if you get a lot of money, the payoff could be enormous, then that's a different dynamic. Whereas I'm seeing this we're almost there already. It's just we have to try these other angles, you know. But that's another habit of mine. I think I've developed since maybe late teens or something. If there's something I want to do, or like I have plans, I hold up. But like, say it requires me to buying something or spending money on something, I save that part until last. It's like, okay, I'm gonna like if you wanted to pick up a hobby or something. Okay, first I'm gonna learn how to do this, and then I'm gonna do these steps, and then I'm gonna get to the point where I need to buy some tools or something. Then I'll do it. Because what I found is if you just buy it first, sometimes you don't get around to it, and then you've lost your money. So it's good to wait until you need to pull the trigger.
So I want to ask, this is probably going to sound like a vague question, so I apologize in advance for it, but what was it like from the moment that you did that first video? You're like, you've been talking about this in how not owning games for a long time. You get to the point of what happened with the crew. I think we went over it at the same time. You did a much more in-depth analysis than me. I was just cursing at my camera for 10 minutes about Ubisoft. And what was the first thing that you did? Because I imagine as you have more legal experience than me. I didn't also understand like the law background that you had.
Well, not actually, not as much as you might think. Okay, so like with the crew, once I decided I wanted to do something about it, well, the first thing I did, I actually was looking into the U.S. first because I was thinking this is just outrageous. But I also made a video on that, and I essentially did an SOS included in that video when I said I was going to try and research everything. But here's my email. Hey, if you're in another country like Germany or France and you know about consumer laws, please contact me. And then that led to finding out more information, and then I kind of built on that and then did another video essentially expanding that kind of SOS, and then I got a lot more feedback, and then we were finally able to kind of pursue some paths. Had a lot of dead ends. We probably lost an entire month on dead ends from how the system indicates that you're supposed to do it, but what we didn't realize at the time is that there just weren't laws on this. Like, it's not that this is totally legal, it's that there's just not laws that cover this kind of situation where, you know, you pay once, they don't tell you how long it lasts, and then they take it back. You know, it's not something that normally happens in commerce. You know, it's either a good or a service usually. So
what was the process like for you of going from sitting, playing games, talking about the revocation of ownership on YouTube to actually getting an initiative started? Because I imagine you didn't have in your back pocket, here's the exact...
Well, it was a spectrum. I mean, I did these kind of, you know, game commentary videos before. That's kind of where it started off, where I try to, well, for me, I guess most people wouldn't care, but me, a little bit of shock value, where I start off playing the game, you know, I'm talking about it, and like give a review. And the thing is, this is all old footage I had of the game. It had already been shut down, but I'm talking about it as though it's still alive. And then like midway, I'm like, oh yeah, this game's dead. No one can ever play this again, you know. And then so to try to sort of wake people up a bit, and I was hoping I did some stuff like that a couple times where I kept trying to just sort of hope people wake up, and then somebody who does know what they're doing, or at least knows more, could contact me. We can kind of build on that, but it never really went anywhere. What I didn't realize until last year was that the deck was more stacked rigged than I even realized in the United States. Like, this was already settled back when I was in high school. Not only did I not know that, I talked to maybe 5 or 6 lawyers that didn't know that. And I just got lucky with the right one later who did some pro bono legal research, and then he found the actual court case that pertains to this. Is like, no, you're screwed. Nothing less than an act of Congress is going to fix this, you know.
Yeah. Oh, what? So, like, did you have any particular stories that were somewhat like this battle stories where there was somebody who helped you, and as a result of listening to an expert, you broke campaign finance? Like, did you have any moments like that where there was just this horrible turn? Because I am completely clueless when it comes to anything related to lobbying. I learned all of this stuff from, you know, sitting in my chair, petting my cat, being a washed-up MacBook repairman. And I'm just kind of curious if you had any stories.
Not with
like
lobbying.
That.
I mean, we discovered a European video game lobby that was against this, and they actually made a statement against it in a French newspaper. And the reasons they gave were just, it's like, just throw anything out there. It doesn't even have to make sense. Just like, oh, this is a huge privacy concern, or, oh, we have to protect our users' content experience, or something like that. I forget what it was.
in the United States, the game lobby is the one that's the most difficult for me to defeat. Minnesota and Texas have exemptions on right to repair for video games. It was easier to get right to repair for a 50,000 pound tractor than it is to get right to repair for an Xbox to change a DVD drive. It's absolutely insane. I don't understand how they have this level of a stranglehold on the entire industry.
It's regulatory capture. I mean, yeah, that's the other thing. When you were, our conversation way back when you were saying like, yeah, raise lots of money. What I was trying to say is like my targets were already things that you didn't actually need a lot of money. You just needed people willing to do stuff. So I needed a bunch of people who owned that game once it shut down, and it had, 12 million copies floating out there. So at least enough people for a critical mass had receipts of it. Just send it to this consumer agency. Send it here. Here are all the instructions. We had to make it. We had to do all the work for them, to give them a guide and kind of usher them to it, make it as easy as possible so we can get all those people in there. But that struck me as something doable, just getting a bunch of people to report something to a consumer protection agency that has some teeth. Or in this case, get a bunch of people who qualify to sign an initiative. And then, so it's like the goals I was seeing off in the distance, those struck me as achievable. It's just, you got a journey to go there. Whereas if that's some of the goals in the United States, I mean, yeah, like I mentioned, an act of Congress to fix this. Okay, if you're not Daddy Warbucks, well, where do you start on that? That's like, I don't even, I can't even fathom.
It's interesting because some of the things that got, like the right to repair bill for wheelchairs, I think $10,000 wound up getting spent on the lobbyists for that. And when you find a lobbyist that gives a shit, and you find the hardest part is actually getting all of the people to do the work. It's getting a 93-page report written on all the different ways that wheelchair users get screwed and are not able to fix it, or getting them all to show up on this day, and having people that are volunteers that are, or I shouldn't say volunteers, people that are, it's your job to knock on these doors of these people and make sure they all show up on this day. That stuff can be very, very aggravating. One of the things that stuck out to me the most in the video that you did is when you said, this is one of the most popular initiatives and it only has this many signatures, which means it's not that I can't get people to care about games, it's hard to get people to care about anything. What did it feel like when you saw that and that realization came over you? Because I felt
yeah, you were talking about me being, no, I think I'm operating, well, maybe we're similar now, but I went into this with a lot of cynicism. Okay, I'm not shocked by this. It's just, I look at it more like, you go to play craps or poker. It's like, yeah, got a bad hand. All right, it's more like that rather than just being crushed. Or because I'm used. That's the thing. Like, I'm used to feeling a little crazy about this, that more people don't care about it. To me, it's like such a fundamental thing. But I realized, like, okay, I guess I'm kind of the minority here. I can try to convince people. Maybe, some of them get it, but I also feel like I can handle it because I'm familiar with lots of science fiction, like like this is normal for the Twilight Zone. Things like this happening where the whole world's just weird, but things make sense from your perspective. So.
Yeah, I remember in 2015 there was this one person I spoke to, assembly person, and I forget if it was assembly person or state senator. I think it was assembly person in New York State. And I was going around to each of the rooms with a MacBook motherboard and a little wire and a page from a schematic. And I said, this is Apple wants $750 to $1250 to replace this. When I take this wire between here and here, it now works again. This document lets me know how to fix it. This used to be in the back of every radio, and now in every television, and now it's not. What have you heard about this? And he said, well, when you're replacing a fuse, they said that when you replace a fuse in this product, that you're changing it from a Mac to a PC, but you're misrepresenting it as if it's still a Mac to your customers, which is fraud. And I had steam coming out the top of my head, and I did my best to contain myself. And then I said, why'd you believe that? And he said, because nobody else showed up. And he just stops paying attention to me, and he's writing. I'm like, what are you doing? And he says, like, are you paying attention to me? And he's like, I'm co-sponsoring your bill, asshole. And that was a very, very illuminating moment for me, which is that I realized in that moment that what you had said, which is nobody shows up. It's not that I didn't I wasn't even dressed properly. I've never been to a legislative hearing or building in my life, and that was the more I dig into the issues that I dig into, the more I realize it's not even that like there's this overwhelming, insane opposition, because I mean there is, but that's a part of it. But it's not all of it. It's that most people don't show up, not even just for the issue that I talk about, but for anything. And I've noticed, I think that people are rightfully blackpilled because they feel like even if I do speak up about my issue, nobody gives a shit, nobody bothers, nobody listens to me, nothing changes. And I didn't realize the degree to which almost how little it took to get a legislator to change his mind. And I asked him why not until now, and he's like, nobody showed up into my office. You're the first person who did. And I think he was trying to make a point to me in that moment, which is, you may be dressed like a schmuck. You may not know what the fuck you're doing. You may not be a real lobbyist, but I'm willing to change my mind and put my name and pen and paper to a piece of legislation because you showed up to talk to me. And I think that was his way of telling me, do this shit more often. And that was
what was that, like a local representative or a state one, or?
That was a state rep. It wasn't a federal. It was a state rep in
Okay.
New York. So it was a local representative. It was a state assembly person back in 2015. But I think that was his message to me, which is show up to these things. And
I think on like the smaller the scale, the more likely you are to have a politician who just isn't like just corrupt to the absolute core, and might listen to their constituents. Now, you would know more, I guess.
One of the things I was saying was staying in the game, and that in general is with right to repair, at least how it is in the U.S. When there's a bill, even if you have a written law and the law is written the way you want it, there's going to be a long compromise process, compromising process where the industry comes in and says, well, we want this and this and this and this and this and this negotiation process. And there's usually people who walk back and forth. In the EU, this is a petition, which means it's not even a bill. This is just the beginning of a long series of negotiations. So let's say that this petition gets 5 million signatures. Let's say it goes over the top, and what is your role going to be in that process back and forth as Ubisoft and Electronic Arts and everybody else knocks on their door and says, here's what we want, here's why they're all wrong?
Well, officially nothing, because I'm only a resident, not a citizen. I need to learn more Polish. But that's the reason, this initiative launched. That there's an official spokesperson who is an EU resident, and there's, I forget the number, like 12 or 15 official organizers. So there's like a backup spokesperson. They're going to go there. They are going to represent our side of this. I'm in touch with the ones, the spokespeople, and so we're all kind of on the same page on this. I hope to get invited to Brussels as a observer. So I don't know how the procedure is going to be. It could be that they go and talk to them, and then I can convene with them in between sessions or something. Or it could be, nope, they have to solo the whole thing. I'm hands off and just get to see afterwards. But I have confidence they'll represent our side of it. And actually, I think I discussed it before with them, but when I heard the double check, like let's say the EU Commission looks at this and they come back with something that's just not going to protect any games. Like they'll say, like, okay, we've decided to compromise that will allow 2 years minimum support. What I think they should do if that happens and there's not willing to negotiate, everybody walk out and like tell the press, like, okay, they're going to do nothing on this. And hey, that's newsworthy. This, we got over 1 million people to come together on this, and we had basically one demand. We just want them to work once they're done, and they won't. Okay, fine, we walk out. I think that's not the most likely scenario, though. I'm giving it like I said, like 85% chance we're gonna have something favorable. Now again, there could be compromises, like maybe things get grandfathered in, or maybe publishers earning below a certain amount are excluded, or something like that. Or we can live with that, but as long as we're saving like high double-digit numbers of games after the fact, I think that's gonna really make a difference, so that lost media becomes a much rarer event.
But when you say you're not aware if they're going to invite you or how that process works, and by the way, my Polish is horrible too. The only word I know is Krowa because it's written on Chris's desk.
And you don't say it like that.
I don't know how to say it. I just read it. And
you pronounce the W as a V.
Krowa. Yeah, I don't speak it. I see a lot of Polish words in the notes in the tickets at work, and I'm pretty sure they're all bad, but I don't know how to say them. I see. But yeah, but the point is, they're not going to invite you or ask for your input. They listen to the people that show up and make noise. So if you say I'm not going to be fully involved in this process, I'm just kind of curious if there is any sort of plan or framework for other people who are going to be in their ear.
I'll try, but it's an unknown to me. It kind of depends on how the EU Commission structures it, you know. For other people, well, I mean, showing up that won't hurt. Yeah, well, I was, and the way you worded it, I was imagining if they made like a real bad, like I don't know exactly what's expected there, but I was imagining if they made a real bad call, and just go like boo, like, you know, while you're there.
Yeah, like in my experience, there's one or two times, and this was after 2021, 2022, where somebody was asking for my input on anything, and it was usually a legislative staffer. And this is the part that really was awesome. It was the cultural change part, where somebody with a legislative staffer had grown up watching my stuff. They were watching me live stream fixing boards when they were 14, and now they're actually interested in this, which is really cool. And that person decided, I want him in on this. But otherwise, usually you're gonna have to force your way into the room. They're gonna listen to the people that show up that are aggravated or angry, and like there has to be somebody there that's going to be a part of that process. Because my concern would be, let's say you do get the 2 million or 5 million or 10 million signatures, and you have it gets watered down. Like I was reading the Texas Right to Repair bill, and I was being, somewhat, when I was reading all the different exclusions, I mean, somebody sent me a boat for my fish pond, and it came broken in the mail, and it came broken in the mail twice because the mail messed it up. And I was saying, you need better packaging, because I don't have right to repair in the state of Texas excludes marine equipment and boats. So, but it excludes almost everything, and that was with people in the room. People in the room are simply the reason that it even existed at all. So even after this is done, like I guess part of my concern with it was I wouldn't want to see all the work that you did get watered down to the point of people, because like, the worst things happen when people think that they won.
I put my trust in the organizers to represent us, put it like that.
Okay. So
like I mean, I think people give me a certain degree of trust that, try to do this the right way possible. I trust them.
So since I don't know about European lobbying and the law stuff, and also if you have to go to bed at some point, feel free to cut me off and say, stop, like I'm done with this shit. You're always welcome to that. But because I'll talk forever. It's one of the downsides of getting talking for a living. Is what is that organization structure like? Like, who are those people that are the voice of Stop Killing Games and the movement? If, let's say, you either stopped or I don't know.
They're just a collection of concerned citizens, basically, that were willing to put in some of the footwork on this, to put their name on it, fill out the paperwork, say, okay, we're going to organize this, have meetings with the EU Commission, that sort of thing. The leader, Daniel Ondruska, I think is how you pronounce it, he has experience in this sort of what I would call political schmoozing, I guess, or business schmoozing. So he'll create a fine impression, I'm sure, but he's on our side on this. Like, again,
where are those people and how do I find them?
For months,
Where is this, like an organized collection of individuals? Is this people in a Discord? Is this like the legal?
It wasn't. They weren't a Discord. They're kind of spread out. In fact, because they needed to have representatives from different countries. So one's from Hungary, one's from Germany, I think one's from Slovakia. So you needed a minimum of 7, and we got extra just in case 1 or 2 had to fall off for whatever reason, which actually ended up happening. So.
Is this on the Stop Killing Games website?
It might not be. This would be more like on the European Citizens Initiative stuff, like how does it work? So you want, click on a link like, oh, I want to start a European Citizens Initiative. Yeah, no, this is something where obviously I wasn't eligible, but back when I was putting out those SOSs, I was making several contacts with people, internationally, and around that time I discovered the Citizens Initiative, and I just started asking volunteers who've been helping out. It's like, hey, do you want to be interested in trying this? And yeah, enough were. So this is something others could do for pretty much anything the EU has jurisdiction over, So
for these people that are concerned citizens that are going over this, can you give me, are these people that are like, these are people within those individual countries that volunteer, that take up the mantle of saying, I want to help carry this? Is that how that works?
Yeah.
Or, like, do they work, are they employed at all by the governmental structure, or are they just...
No.
Okay.
It's kind of like what I'm doing, except they're official.
Okay, but I would love to see that organization structure, know what it is, and feel...
When you say organization, it's kind of like...
Even if it's just a bunch of dudes in the Discord.
A book club. Yeah, it's like, if it's a book club or an organization, well, kind of, but, it's like they just gathered and did it, and they went through the hoops essentially.
Even if it's just a bunch of people in a Discord, I would love to see that like on the site, and then see where you could keep up with them and people push them, because there are times where people will reach out to me and say something like, did you see this particular law that just got pushed in Virginia that just got butchered? And I'll go, that was not even on my radar, because I did not have a lobbyist for that state. I did not know that. But it's something like that, where there's a channel for like between that, because I think a lot of people see you as the head of the movement, rightfully so, because you started it and you've been talking about it for all this time. But like there's also all these other people, and is there a channel for regular people to be able to poke at them, whether it's Discord, a forum,
Yeah, well,
anything like that?
if you go to the European Citizens Initiative, the email of the spokesperson is on there. In fact, if you're having, for anybody European watching this, if you had trouble signing it, you might want to contact them, because apparently there is a channel to correct it. I pinned that on my latest video. He wanted to add that in. I actually wasn't aware.
Yes, on the initiative, you have the representatives, you have Daniel, you have Alex, and the members and everything over here. And
yeah, I founded the movement, but the initiative, I was ineligible to start that or officially be a part of it. But I mean, I'm obviously a workhorse for it. But
whether it's a Discord chat, a Zulip chat, or whatever, the Matrix, or whatever else, it would be cool if they.
He's had some meetings.
Like
he talked with the Pirate Party in Europe, and we also talked with this sort of. I don't know if they're a law firm also, but it's a legal YouTube channel where they were talking about, like, in German, what the options were. So you're probably not seeing as much of them because some of it's in, not all of it's in English, but.
Is there a way to sign this without being an EU citizen? I'm in the Dominican Republic, or is there a global version?
Sorry. Yeah, please don't.
Yeah, you can't. That's.
We may have enough of that already. It won't count, and it kind of.
It
puts us in a fog. We don't know how many signatures we need. Is what's going on. We're in a fog now.
Yeah, so. Don't. Here's this.
Yeah, like it says we passed 1 million. We probably haven't passed an eligible 1 million yet. I don't know where we are. It's dead reckoning.
They said, do you think Stop Killing Games could ever grow into a broader player advocacy law group, or what about funding? I don't know what that means.
You're asking
that was just the audience question.
I mean, I'm very pessimistic, put it like this. It took me so long to kind of, or you might relate to this, it took me so long to claw up to this point, whereas I feel like, especially if we get the signatures and the EU initiative path goes through, I feel like I'll have taken every single shot I could find. And you would need to just be, you would need some really deep pockets to do more than this.
Yeah, congratulations on the 1 million. Now the real shit starts. I sincerely hope.
Well, it's an illusion. Yeah, you need to think of that as an illusion. Like, it's probably not a bad idea if you just automatically subtract 200,000 from it. So
for bots or for ineligible addresses.
What
is it for, like ineligible addresses or something else?
Yeah, well, if somebody screws up the form, then it doesn't count. And we have claims that they're unverified that people were trying to spoof this to get to 1 million faster, so people would just let their guard down. And we've really lost, but we don't know it yet.
Hanging chads.
For all I know, that could just be 2 people and it's just a rumor, or it could be a bot network. I have no idea. That's what my last video is about. Maybe somebody who knows, who can like analyze data and traffic and where it's coming from, maybe they can make an educated guess on it. I don't know.
If a game dev releases game, refuses to end of life, or plan or incorrect plans, refuses to give it, what happens to them? I think that this as an initiative is very early on, so that you don't even have the bill yet, much less the actual.
I could answer what would probably happen. Okay, so they just refuse to comply?
Yeah.
Fine, they get fined. It's like, okay, you didn't want to make your. That's a good question for Matt. Like the costs involved. Matt, would 25 million be more than making your end of life plan from the beginning?
Yeah, that would terrify me. I mean, it may be a thing where you do a percentage of revenue or something like that. If it's small, like, I could imagine some circumstances where maybe indie developer, has an unfortunate accident or doesn't, or like for whatever reason.
An unfortunate accident is a little too big of a fine, man. Come on.
Yeah, like if I got hit by a bus and I never finished my end of life plan for my game.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I heard that wrongly, because you said like what would the fine be, and then I heard unfortunate accident, and then I just like 2 and 2. No, I was being.
Yeah, so I'm sure there's a percentage of developers that will try to do an end of life plan but may fail. But assuming you get enough of this stuff done up front, it should be pretty low risk to flip a switch and have it on.
Yeah, it's about making the path of least resistance. We want it to be cheaper to make an end of life plan than to not. Essentially, I think once we have that dynamic, a lot of stuff falls into place.
Because in America, you've seen the AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile all sold user data. AT&T was selling data to bail bondsmen and bounty hunters, and they got fined 0.02% of their yearly profit.
Oh, it's a joke, yeah.
0.02%, and it's like we fined them $53 million, and it sounds, it's a headline, right? But then when you actually do the math, it's
I talked to a friend. He thinks it's totally been absorbed to become cost of business now.
0.02% of my yearly profit to do something that for many years drastically increased my profit. That's a joke. I mean, that's a complete and utter joke. So somebody said I completely disagree about the 2% thing. Fortnite, League of Legends, other F2P games are live servers, and they are very popular. F2P?
Oh, I think we might be mixing up numbers. That 3% number, that's out of all the games that require you to have like an online connection, how many of those charge you money each month to play them? And it's not that many. Like Fortnite, you can play that for free. I mean, it's
Soup Fund. Oh dear. Yeah, I would be very excited to see if those people would. I'm very excited to see what it is they do over the next several years. Because like when they said if getting the million is one thing, but the rest of it is going to be, like the hard part is going to be making sure that this doesn't get watered down to complete shit. Because the New York bill that happened, I remember just doing a live stream.
Well, okay, they may not be most of them might not be as quite as headstrong as I am, but imagine like diet versions of myself in the room or something that, like I said, I think if they're willing to just walk, if the EU Commission refuses to give something sane, on this, I think that's the mentality to take, because that's your leverage there. Yeah. Because, and we might maybe we can even try to make some contacts with the press too, just to be ready if that were to happen.
Yeah, because one of the problems
I don't think it's going to be quite that bad though, because it's already just a giant hole in the law on this. So, and we're just marching up saying, hey, how about basic consumer rights?
It's one of the problems that I've seen with some nonprofits in America, or just, I shouldn't even say nonprofit, just kind of nonprofit culture, is everybody, like, you don't want to crap on somebody who's trying to do the right thing. And a lot of people will say, well, look, we've made this incremental victory. I didn't get everything I wanted. I should celebrate the win that I got. But it leads to this thing where people will celebrate shit that's not a win.
It depends. Like, I made a whole video talking about, like, possibly acceptable compromises. And then there's, like, a line saying, we cannot compromise below this because then we're saving nothing. There's like I mentioned, that 3%. Okay, maybe we have to take the hit on that 3%, but we're saving 97% of gains. That's still a win, But if it was inversed, then no, that this is not helping almost at all.
Yeah, I am completely willing to admit that with Right to Repair, I am a complete abject failure. When I did this video, I see Right to Repair as winning not when this bill gets passed or there's been this slight incremental improvement.
Yeah, I hate that crap.
Yeah, because if I could not be, how about this? If the me of 2009 couldn't start today and have a path to success, I failed. Like, that's the way that I see it. I think of the me of 2009. Could I repeat that? And if I couldn't repeat that, I believe if the bridge burned behind me, I failed. So I don't want to make that nonprofit, impact report statement where I go, here are all the wins we had. No, if I can't get access to the schematic, the diagram, if I can't buy a chip to do my job, I have this little win, and you could say it's incremental or we're on the way to it, but I'm not going to go out there and declare victory or anything like that, because it's just scummy. And one of my concerns would be if it was walked back a little bit, people saying, well, look, we got Stop Killing Games light, and it's like,
it depends how light. It better not be that light.
Because people want to take the victory, but I don't.
Oh yeah, hell no. I mean. Well, I've even avoided avenues that we could have taken, but I didn't see them as saving games. Like in the UK, one way we probably could have hit harder is there's law saying that the customer, you can't omit information to the customer that would have affected their purchase decision. Well, these games don't tell you how long they last. That obviously affects it. But we were looking at it and we were thinking, well, the likely outcome of this is just them saying, we will support this for a minimum of 2 years. Well, then that's not going to save anything. So it's like I just abandoned that because, yeah, it could look like a win, but it's not getting us to the actual goal. You know, that's the thing.
Yeah, the thing is, and what makes it difficult to admit that is, in order to accept the truth, I have to say what I just said, which is, with right to repair, I have been an abject fucking failure. Which is that I mean, okay, people in wheelchairs they've been helped with many other. There is people with tractors have been helped somewhat, not as much as they could be. But like the me of 10 years, 15 years ago, I could not start in a park and do what I did now. So I have to be willing to admit that, and that's harsh. Which is why you come up with people that'll say, "Well, no, I'm not a failure. I won. Look, this little thing's okay." And then when you accept a little.
I preemptively said that in my end of Stop Killing Games videos, where I just straight up say, if all that comes from this, from the German agency, is they have to give 2 years notice, I'll consider that an abject failure. Like, I'm just letting people know up front, like, here's the win condition, here's the fail condition, and there's not going to be a lot in between, you know. So that's also one of the reasons that simple was kind of good for this, because if we had 50 different contingencies, well, then the EU might look at these details that don't matter and hone in on those and just throw out the other stuff, and okay, now we've lost focus. Whereas it's kind of straightforward. If they're not going to leave games in a working state, then we're just shuffling papers around, not doing anything.
What would you see?
It makes this way harder to dodge the way it's set up.
What would you see as would you see this as even like a side victory if this was separate from Stop Killing Games as a movement? If something were passed that said, if you have a game that in any way, shape, or form, like, it requires internet connectivity for this particular functionality to work, that you're not allowed to call it something that you sold. You have to, like, you can no longer use the word sell.
There's only one scenario I know of where I would accept that, which is if you had to put the expiration date right on the box or right on the store page, like right front and center. It's riskier, but I think that could do something, because I think that might actually wake the average person up, because they're like, okay, I'm gonna buy this game, like the Call of Duty. It's like, wait a minute, this expires in 4 years. Like, what? You know, like,
It'll get them thinking.
That would sink in. What?
Yeah, it'll get them thinking. Like, this is I didn't buy eggs. What are you talking about expiration date? Like, you would get people.
Yeah, exactly. I think nothing less than that would work.
Because California tried to do something like that here, and I was actually very behind this particular law. Like, people can shit on California, my comments all they want. They did you can call them communist all you want. They're the one fucking state in the United States that wanted to pass a law saying this is the definition of own and purchase, and you may not fucking redefine it on page 21 of your EULA. So suck it. But anyway, but being California, they didn't actually enforce it at all in any way, shape, or form. But the idea behind it was cool. You can't use the word sale, purchase, buy, or sold if they can fucking revoke it. And that's
see, that's not enough for me, because the problem is, especially when we're talking about creative stuff like games or movies or something, like each one's its own unique thing. So if the only person selling that has these terms saying like, yeah, you're not buying anything, it's like, well, there's not really an alternative. It's unique form of media. So it doesn't really, I would have to, but like this, I would need to be convinced that this is a path that would actually change things like a year or two from now or something like that. And I don't see that with almost any of them. The expiration date could, also because I think publishers would not want to put that on there for multiple reasons. And I think they would, well, yeah, maybe Mac can weigh in. Like, if you had an online game, let's say your choice was to have an end-of-life build or put an expiration when your game ends. You get to guess it. Which would you rather have to comply with?
Yeah, the thing that scares me about the end date is it's hard to know how long that's going to be. You tell people, hey, it's 2 years, but your game might be still selling really well 2 years from now.
And it cuts both ways,
right? So you'll feel like you're bumping it like every 2 years. Okay, I'm gonna bump it another 2 years, and then another 2 years, and it would definitely scare me, and people would really consider.
And I think that would hurt sales too.
I'm gonna imagine.
Yeah, like people saw that on your store page.
Of the box,
I mean,
even having on your store page, hey, we used a Nuvo for whatever, we'll have sales, right? So you can imagine that having a date, the game's gonna die by this date, would be scary.
Yeah.
Also, from a support standpoint, developers will be really scared, like, hey, do we have enough money to support this for 2 years? Like, we're making this commitment now. This better be, like, a real date and serious.
So yes. I think this should be separate. I mean, I think that should already exist. Like, aside from this, like, I don't want it to be, instead of getting Stop Killing Games or instead of having ownership, you have this thing in advertising. But I'm surprised that we don't already have that. That should exist aside from this, that if you buy something, you can't use the word buy and then on page 21 of the end user license agreement say that buy doesn't mean what you think it means. I think that's just disgusting. And there's been a failure.
I was a little slow to dawn on me, but I realized if we get what we're asking for, then that language doesn't matter, because you are getting an equivalent of buying it. Maybe not every last thing, like you might not be able to resell it or something, but you do get to own it in some capacity.
But this exists in so many areas outside of gaming. Like, even if Stop Killing
Yeah.
Games passes, the sheer number of items that you purchase that you don't actually own, that like, this goes so far beyond gaming. And I wish, at the very least, like, one of the parallel things that stems from this as a movement is truth in advertising. Because even the pirate softwares of the world were saying, yeah, when you buy this, they should at least be honest that you didn't fucking buy it. Even the people that were completely against the initiative for all these different reasons, all these people could have come together and said this one thing, which is, you can't say that you own something if you don't. You can't use that wording and terminology. And I keep going back to that Sony end user license agreement where you have to go to page 21 to figure out that you don't own what you bought and paid for, and that you can't redefine a word. You're not allowed to do that. That shouldn't be a thing in any fucking country, regardless of the industry.
It's gonna be acrobatics with the wording, though, because these don't fit goods and they don't fit services. Like, you can't say this is a rental, because a rental tells you how long it's gonna last. So you can't say you're buying it, because you get to keep it if you're buying it. It's like this weird in-between space that they're trying to play it both sides, and I don't know what language you would use, I guess.
A good example would be Sony when they delist movies, right? Like, if you buy a movie, is it going to say, hey, you only own this movie for a year and it gets deleted? Like, man, that's going to change it.
Yeah, because the lack of truth in advertising across the entire industry to me seems absolutely horrific. And I'm not saying I would want to not own things, because this is what I was going over with the developer yesterday. Where, let's say hypothetically somebody said, well, okay, you have truth in advertising, right? Nobody's going to change their mind. Everybody's just going to put in the front of it, you don't own it, and people are just going to fucking accept it because I don't. Tell me this is a totally separate topic, and I realize I'm going on tangents here, but this happened with my employees. I'll ask them, and it's, people have an idea that the people that I work with would maybe be aligned with me on certain items. They all have our AirPods, and when they'll talk about they'll tell me about this kernel anti-cheat and this other crap that goes into the games that they're buying, and I'm just thinking, like, why are you okay with running that? Like, what in God's name makes you feel like that is a good fucking idea? And like, oh yeah, everybody else does it. And so even if you do have the truth in advertising, the problem that I have is that everybody just goes along with it. You would have truth in not owning things, but I don't want you to tell me the truth about the fact that I don't own anything. I just want to actually own things.
I think one of your old videos I listened to, you were talking about how almost like all the washers now were basically that they were going to crap out after 2 years or something like that. And it's the problem is, you might hate this, but then if there's no alternative, well, your only alternative is don't buy the thing, which, I mean, good for you if you do that, but then that doesn't necessarily change the practice if you're just standing alone there. Or buy the thing and then you have to accept the crap. So the only third option is to go and actually get the law involved somehow once you get into that situation. I think it's like a lack of alternatives because they've kind of closed the noose on this.
Yeah, I can't imagine because when I was talking to the developer yesterday, and we was making the point about separating it from live service or something that you buy. I have this feeling that everything would just become a you don't own it, because people would just kind of slowly accept it. I don't. People, and even with that California law, it says that you have to be honest about what it is that you're selling. But I just have a feeling that what you would wind up is with a bunch of people honestly telling you don't own anything, and I think I would still be very, very salty. I still think that you should have to be truthful in advertising, and it's weird because I still think that that's important. But I would simultaneously still be incredibly aggravated and pissed off, just as I am right now, at the fact that you're just being honest and upfront with me about the fact that I don't actually own what I bought and paid for.
Yeah, it made me think that, I've heard the complaint like, well, the politicians don't know anything about this. I'm thinking, that's actually better than if you were to take like somebody, especially young, stereotyping in the game industry, where they accept this as the way things should be. Like, well, what do you mean? Of course you don't own it. Whereas a politician might decide, well, he doesn't know anything about video games, but yeah, he understands owning something. It's like, oh yeah, you can't own it? Yeah, that's weird. Yeah, sure, let's pass a law on that. Perfect. So yeah, that's another thing I've run into. Laymen, people who just don't play games or know much about them, they tend to get this much faster than a lot of your average gamer. or that gamer's just gonna be hung up on some detail. It's like, well, yeah, you're not talking about multiplayer. Come on, like, you know. It's like, well, yeah, it's possible. You know?
Yeah, I can. Let's see. Oh, I lost my chat window. I was trying to do too many things at once. Give me 1 minute.
I realized I didn't even check to see where the chat was located. Is that on your YouTube channel?
Yes, it's the YouTube mostly.
Okay, maybe I'll see what the chat's saying.
I know there are cool people that use Discord and all this other random shit, and I don't fucking know.
Oh yeah, I almost
No.
I used Discord once in a blue moon prior to this movement, and I might go back to that afterwards.
All right, here's a interesting question.
Okay.
It talks about how you ban players for, say, cheating in your game, and they lose access to the game, and they kind of can't play it anymore. Is an interesting example?
See that's a actually I could see two scenarios of that are both acceptable. Well, maybe I think what we were saying, or we might push for, this is an example where a compromise might work if it was careful. One is, okay, so you're cheating, fine, you're booted out of the game. I think that's fair to have terms like that. But the two aspects of it would be, one, okay, when we do shut down the game, maybe it's, 2 years later, maybe it's 10 years later. Because you paid for it, you get that end of life bill. That could be an option. Or, see, when I'm worried, I think we would need to have that, because we would need something. If we don't have that, we need some protection that they can't just, update the license saying, okay, well, if you're running on Windows, you're banned. And then we just get rid of all the user base that way. So it's kind of a neener. We don't have to give you an end of life bill because we made up something that just so happened our entire customer base is infringing on. So now they're shut out from having the game.
Yeah,
so,
I think
so that
that's
would be the
probably
main
a
thing.
good.
But
That's
yeah,
probably
you
a good
could
compromise. Yeah.
you probably would lose your purchase a long time. However, I think another good compromise, but I don't think we would make it mandatory, is some companies, what they do is if somebody's cheating, they put all the cheaters in one server. So you're permanently on a different track. For if if you're a cheater, like that's a one-way road. But so you get to keep playing the game, but gee, a lot of other cheaters in this game.
This is a weird story with This is a strange one with. What happened to that? Did my meeting just die? Oh, fuck. Oh, crap. My meeting just died. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Oh, shizzle. Oh, god damn it. I killed it. WW. God damn it. Fuck you, Zoom. I actually paid for a pro account. Fuck you, Zoom. I go back to Jitsi. Oh, you fucking piece of shit. You absolute piece of shit. Again. I killed Zoom. Oh god. Zoom just kicked me. Fuck you, Zoom. Fuck you with the rusty spoon. The director of my nonprofit wants to use Zoom. I use Jitsi usually. I get it. Open source stuff sometimes doesn't work, but I'll take this over dealing with Zoom bugs any day. I sent him a link to a Jitsi. Bye. Hopefully he sees it. Come on. Scarlet. So that actually gives me time to finish this form, though, which is not bad. Ah. Hello.
Oh,
Oh. So. Okay. Can you hear me?
television color bars on your side.
Oh, yeah. You can hear me, right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, gorgeous. So, well, my cheating story, I'm doing something on screen right now. One second. My cheating story is I was playing Warcraft 2 back in the day online, and there was before Warcraft 3 multiplayer. Do you remember how you used to be able to type? There would be a username on the screen, but you can't select the username, but you can block a user if you know their username.
Yeah.
Well, there would be a person who would have a name that's a number of lowercase L's and capital I's, and the font that they used did not allow you to tell which was which. So the fonts would be, so I would have, there would be somebody that would show up and they wouldn't cheat. They would just spam the screen with a bunch of a random, with the number, the lowercase L and a 1 or an uppercase I, and I wouldn't be able to tell what their username is. And they would just spam it until I couldn't see any of what was going on my screen, and you couldn't block them. Are there any games that still have this type of ridiculous design where it's not cheating, it's just they make the game unplayable as a result of some just being a dick like that?
I know we've been dealing with Nintendo banning consoles for things like that, where you'll set your Nintendo account to a certain name and you'll get banned, which is like very unfortunate.
Have you guys been following what's been going on with the Switch and banning people? Because I did a video on their end user license agreement and their terms, and so there's two things that I don't understand here. The first thing I don't understand is how is it that entire community. I got so much hate for that video, but it was surprisingly it wasn't from Nintendo shareholders, it was from the Nintendo users. And the second thing is there was something recently that happened where somebody was banned for reinstalling something. I didn't follow the whole thing. Have you followed it? How close are you with that?
Yeah, so I've got a game on Switch that's released right now, so I can comment on it. But Nintendo just has the ability to ban your console. It's not really in this legally compliant way. It's in this bit of this gray area that may be challenged. But Twitch developers can also ban people from their accounts and games as well. So I do know that there's piracy devices and MIG switches and things like that Nintendo can detect now and ban you, but there's also reports of, you put a card in and you return your Switch and now someone else gets that ban switched. And not really a great model of solving the problem, for sure.
Yeah, so what people have said that the way that this worked before and the way it works now is it's very, very similar, and they didn't really change much in their terms. Well, so you shouldn't be mad at it. And I'm just wondering, okay, let's say you're correct and I'm wrong. Why were you not mad then 3 or 5 years ago? And it's like, well, they don't do it to anybody. It never happens.
Yes, so the Switch One also has the same ban feature. They just kind of correlated it in their terms of service when they updated it. So it looks like they were going to more aggressively ban people. So yeah, it's still not okay. And I know in the past, say Xbox 360 also did console breaks and bans. So it's not really a completely new territory, but usually there's not enough people banned where it ends up in a legal dispute. But I am concerned that if Nintendo, you change your name to a certain name, Nintendo doesn't like and ban your console. That's like really not good.
That's insane. And I don't understand the Nintendo culture very much, but it was very interesting to me, and it reminded me a little bit of the Apple stuff, where the people that, if a Nintendo shareholder viewed that and they were mad at me, it's like, I completely get that, I understand it. What was difficult for me to understand is when you're not a Nintendo shareholder, you're a Nintendo product user. I'm very curious, so it was very curious to me why I was getting the reactions that I was getting when you're not paid to defend a company that's saying that they have the right to turn off what you bought and paid for.
I think it's Stockholm syndrome, form of it.
Is that
yeah?
Is that a console thing, a PC thing, a general thing, or like I don't
know?
So
in the console, and this happened with the Xbox 360 as well. They have e-fuses that they can just blow on your console if they really want to, and they can also kind of block it online. So even if you have downloaded digital games, they're not going to launch if your console's banned. Maybe if it had a card and your console's banned, it might be okay. But you can effectively brick someone's console and their game library. A good example is we had someone leak a build of our game on Xbox, and I emailed Microsoft and said, "Hey, can you just remove their game off the account?" And they ended up, banning this guy's whole console, which is like, as a developer, I feel like it's a little bit extreme. So, I'm okay with account bans for cheating and stuff like that, or be banned for multiplayer. But people's consoles and their whole game library getting lost.
Yeah, because
Over
there
like
is
a name.
there is a single player
crazy.
aspect to this, and if you're banning the
Yeah.
console, it's but that there comes a question of what type of punishment is punitive punishment the thing to do, where you're not just doing enough punishment to protect others, you're doing enough punishment to drive home, fuck you, you did something wrong, don't do it again. It's the difference between stopping somebody from doing something wrong and putting somebody in prison, and at what point is it right to put somebody in prison for what they've done wrong?
Yeah, it really reminds me of the Better Way Electronics or whatever it is, like breaking people's software remotely, but it's just like the
Wow.
crazy extreme version of it, right? But yeah, I wish kind of people would fight back against that kind of thing, but it's really a field that people just don't seem to care because they're like, well, I didn't get banned, and you must have done something wrong, so it's kind of your fault, and it's not really a thing people are rejecting.
It was the
in
fact
mass
that
right now.
the fact that people were fighting amongst each other over that was very, very odd to me. Is there any of that subculture with PC? Is it like a console versus PC thing that I don't understand? Is it like a type of game thing, or is that just Reddit users that I'm dealing with?
Yeah, so with consoles, kind of Sony, Nintendo, and Microsoft look at it like a secure platform, right? So they look at it as in we need to protect games from leaking, we need to protect developers, we need to protect our own like live service, and they just kind of ratchet that up a little bit too much to the point where it's kind of hurting customers. So I'd hope people kind of push back on that. On PC, I guess the worst thing that can happen is your Steam account gets a VAC ban or a developer game ban, but your whole library's there, right? Unless Steam bans your whole account, I mean, your PC's still usable. So the kind of attitude is more like you're kind of renting the Nintendo console, and it's their console. And if they don't want you to have it, they can trip this switch and ban you.
Back when I was working at Fudo, he was really engaged in wanting open source software to not suck, and he had some controversial opinions on licensing and everything else. And one of the things that I remember him saying is, you can't. How do you square the circle of wanting things to be open source and anti-cheat? Because he said, I have no solution to this. It's like you pick one. You either have good anti-cheat or you can have open source software, but you can't really have both. Is there anything that you can do about that?
Yeah. So if you remember Steam OS with the Steam Deck, a lot of popular games just dropped SteamOS because they didn't want to do anti-cheat on it, for example, right? And even though doing anti-cheat's a single checkbox, they're just kind of not really interested in that because of the Steam Deck's like a Linux version where anyone can kind of edit the kernel. So without some kind of platform security, I mean, people can, modify traces on the motherboard if they want to, right? So like trying to keep this thing secure is near impossible. And so you have to do a lot of stuff server side, right? But there's limits to the server side stuff, right? But I'm sure there's some middle ground where your console could boot into like a secure mode, or your PC could boot into a mode. But a lot of this stuff's kind of designed to be insecure by default. Like you could put a Thunderbolt card in and just write DMA over your game, for example, with direct memory access. So it's an interesting field, but it's very hard to secure, for sure.
Let's see. Do I have any good questions left before? Yeah, my headache is reaching peak, so I may finally.
We can wind it down if you want.
Let's see. So what do you got? Let's see. What have I missed? What have I not covered? What are things that? Are you?
I don't know. The chat probably has stuff, but then I noticed with your chat,
It just never stops.
as soon as there's something to react to, then it's too fast to read. So.
It's impossible. It's just impossible. It's impossible when I don't have a headache to read that. I used to do this thing with live streams where I would stay on the stream long. I would say I need to get to the end of the chat, and then it would be a 6-hour video, because the questions never end. But let me look at this. Arranged by latest. Let's see if there's any.
It's interesting. Someone made a comment about false detections. So there is also an error, a failure rate when you're detecting cheating and banning people's consoles. Is if you get it wrong and ban your console, like it's not great. So it just makes the accidental bans more severe if you're destroying people's game library as well.
Do they plan to remove proprietary code and expect original product to keep working?
Yeah. So
yes.
that's a good one.
You went over that. Yeah, and one of the things. Yeah, I think they are. And now there are some developers that have said that's naive. You've explained why that shouldn't be naive, or why the product should. Tell me if you seem to explain that the product should not be designed in a way where if you had to remove a specific service that it destroys everything.
Well, so you have your own proprietary code that's the game logic, right? And you're going to be distributing that in the binary form. But if we're looking at proprietary code like Amazon Aurora database, there's like open source alternatives, right? Like every one of these major providers has an alternative. So there's ways to ship this without it being a problem. It requires a little bit more effort on picking service and choices.
The solution for gas games is quite okay. What's a gas game? I know software is a
Games is a service game.
I'm like,
It's the
SaaS?
same thing as live
Okay.
service.
Okay, SaaS. Yeah, that's. I have a brain worm for acronyms. Just acronyms kill me.
No, it was actually I found it kind of annoying because first the industry, there might have been something they called it before then, but they started promoting games as a service, and then once that started entering the lexicon, then they switched it to live service. I guess they decided it sounded better. I'm keep expecting them to try and switch it to something new later. To just kind of throw off the public, I guess.
It seems to work. Is there?
One other interesting thing about bans is they can also ban game cards and discs. So if you have like a PS4 game, for example, or a Switch card, they can ban the certificate on that card and block that card from working.
Oh yeah, Lewis, you'd like this if you didn't know it. On the Crew game in the EULA, it says once they terminate it, you are required to destroy all copies of it that you in your possession.
Are you serious?
I am serious. Here, let me pull up the
Fucking
actual.
It's like
language.
a copy and paste from a software URL. Please destroy all copies. And
Yeah,
return
no,
to
here,
developer.
let's get the exact wording.
This can't be real. No way. Fake
No,
news.
no.
They can't.
Okay.
That's
The Crew. Actually, I think I have a link. 1 second.
yeah. I'll set it on fire.
I've
before I kill that
accessed it
mosquito.
enough times by now. Let's see. Yeah, here I'll post it in the chat too. Let everybody see it. All right. Okay, I put it in the chat. Let me bring it up. And to search for terminate. Okay, well, there's a lot of term. Oh yeah, here we go. Yep. Upon termination for any reason, you must immediately uninstall the product and destroy all copies of the product in your possession. That's number 8 under termination.
I do not believe you. I do not fucking believe you. Let's see. There's no way. No fucking way. Clinty.
You have the link, or
Shoo,
where
mosquito.
should I post it?
Let me see if I can get it on the screen.
Okay, here I'll post it on the Zoom chat there if you
There's
need a link.
There's a mosquito that's owning me. Hold on. Where are you based again? You said Poland?
Yeah, my wife's Polish, so.
In terms of you, oh god.
This is a classic Ubisoft
Unfortunately,
terms
you're
of
not,
service copy and paste, huh?
unfortunately, you're not lying. I was hoping that you were lying because in the event of termination of your account, you must immediately cease use of all services and destroy any related documentation.
Go down to number 8. No, that's the.
That was 13.
Did you get the link I sent you?
Oh, let me see.
Okay, yeah, I think that one's for the Ubisoft client, but maybe they have the same thing.
You're allowed to make one backup copy, which is interesting.
Okay, there's a chat on. Oh, I forgot. Jitsi has chat. Here we go. Copy link. End user license agreement. Destroy. 8. If you fail to comply with any of the terms and conditions of this EULA, excuse me, upon it.
Yeah, there it is.
Okay. This EULA is effective from the earlier day. You must immediately uninstall the product and destroy all copies of the product in your possession. What?
Yeah, so I guess I'm breaking the law over here. I still have my client. Just in case the emulator
Clinton?
resurfaces.
Bullshit, isn't it, boy? The fuck is that? Clinton? Yeah, right to repair. He's, that is insane. So what can viewers do to help at this point other than signatures? Because the one question I get more than anything else.
That's the best option, honestly. That's why I started that video with this list of crap we've already done over the past year and a half to show. Yeah, this is all under. I've been getting several emails that are like, from Australians were saying, "Oh, can we do anything?" Like, "Oh, have you tried this in Australia?" And I have like a copy paste thing now. I said like, "Well, we already did," and then I show the link to the petition, and then say, "Yeah, it went to the ACCC. We're waiting on a decision." You know. No, that's really your last avenue. That's why when you were saying, "No, you haven't even started," it's just like, yeah, I sent Lewis email afterwards. We were talking about it. There's probably a better analogy. I was saying this. I interpreted what he was saying. It's like, no, we need to go finish the fight. If this was like World War II after we dropped bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, it's like, well, no, we really don't. It's just got to play out now. You know, that's kind of how I see it. I mean, there's steps to do, but on our end, the public, I've seen basically all avenues. So.
Other
I
than
think
like
the only one
joining a
we
class action
weren't
or
able
something,
to
right?
pull off was in Brazil, and we needed more. We needed statistics on how many copies were sold there roughly that we couldn't find. So
I think I've covered just about everything. Thank you for taking the time to come on, and it's been fun. I never, ever since I did that Ubisoft video and them feeling comfortable not owning games, it's been like an interesting year and a half since then. I think it seems like they're gonna have to become comfortable with something else.
well, and hey, if not, if this all crashes and burns, then we know. I mean, maybe that's not any comfort to you, but what was like you mentioned, because nobody showed up. That's what drove me insane was the uncertainty. You know, we're pretending we have rights, but then we're doing this. It's like, well, which is it? You know?
If there's one thing that people get out of this, even if I fail at right to repair any of these things, it's realizing that you should always, it's worth it to take the time to show up, or to send the email, or to do the call, even if you think, because if you think it's worthless, if you think it's useless, then you're technically correct, because your 0.00001 chance of success is still like infinity more than zero if you do nothing.
No, I think we're way higher than that. But we'll find out, I guess.
Well, good job, man. You keep going, and yeah, I'm gonna bother those other people and ask if they have some sort of Discord chat room or something. The organizers from the from the petition website, because I'm sure that I'm gonna ask people to follow up with them and make sure it doesn't turn into one of those fake nonprofit victories. That I shouldn't be saying that, because like not everybody does.
Yeah,
that,
don't worry. Hey, if I have any influence at all, we'll either win or we'll just fail straight up. You know, no ambiguity here. So.
You can't be at here. No right to repair, but can't repair the 3D printed boat that went into my pond that broke. All right, it's been a pleasure talking with you all. Thank you so much.
Yep.
I close Jesse.
Yeah, I'm tired.
Yeah. Have a good night, sir.
Thanks. See you.
Okay. Live stream. Where's my window? Where's my window? Where'd it go? There it is. Oh, bye. Where's my... Do you hear the banging in the background? Hear the banging in the background? So check out my week. Oh, I've had a fun fucking week. I've had a fun 2 years, actually. So first thing that occurs is there's water leaking into my house, and my windows are kind of shitty. I knew this was a fixer-upper house when I bought it. Like, this was a foregone conclusion, right? I knew what I bought. I knew it was a piece of shit. If it wasn't a piece of shit, I couldn't fucking afford it. There's water leaking in. I fixed the mortar. After fixing the mortar, I realized the water leaking in fucked up the windows, but the windows were already the cheapest shit windows that you could ever possibly buy to begin with. After getting the cheapest possible piece of shit windows to begin with replaced, I have to fix the floors because the water leaked into the floors and all that. And apparently the mortar work that I did by trying to fill in the holes myself was absolute garbage. I found somebody who's decent at that. So while they're going through and ripping up the floors during the week that I have a 101 fever the whole week, like it's like 7 in the morning, my door opens and I hear gong, gong, ripping up floors. One of the pipes is fucked up. And you probably see where this is going. So yeah, I'm doing this video on my porch because the entirety of the inside of my house is just fucking destroyed right now. And there's like water everywhere. Wood is ripped up. Yeah. This is my home now. I have my yoga mat. I'm actually going to be sleeping on my porch. I'm not kidding. But I can't sleep on my porch right now because it's just banging all the time. Just banging. Banging. It's fine. Okay. I did a poor job of this entire stream. I felt like shit most of it. I still feel sick. I felt better, and I made the mistake of I went running. I did a speed walk, and then I did a jog, and then I did a sprint, and then the next day it's just like there's a little leprechaun in my head with a giant hammer, or Jack Nicholson in my head with an axe, and just banging on everything. Is this the same house with all the replacements? Yes, this is the I'm never going to forget in the Gamers Nexus video, this one guy going, Louis Rossmann, him talking about a video fixing up his 2,000 square foot house must be nice. Yes, 2,000 square foot thing of toothpicks falling. You too can own a 2,000 square foot house if... House. Blackberry got stuck. She was looking through one of the bars, and when I tried to move the bar just a little bit, you may notice that there's some cheap-ass plexiglass there now. When I went to move the bar so that she could get out, the fucking thing just broke. It is what it is. We do a new house. Alright, I'll stick around a little and read some comments. What do you guys have? Yeah, I was fumbling a little bit. I wanted to give him the donation on camera. Well, he was, without him noticing, that was kind of a fail, because it took fucking forever. I guess I'm happy, you know, my bank has all the anti-fraud stuff. That's good. That's good. I'm also glad that I did not match that after all you guys came in. Yeah, let's see, what is that up to now? What did you send? I sent 2,844, and right now it is, yeah, I did not. Okay, that's kind of cool. Yeah, I sent 2,844. You guys sent the rest. That's wow. That's, yeah. You guys beat me. Yeah, when he was saying like, oh, I haven't had time to do videos, paying rent. What pissed me off about that was, again, it just comes down to this whole thing of the people. Why is it that the people that try to fix their corner of the world are always playing by a different set of rules than the people that make their corner of the world, that fuck up their corner of the world? Like, it's just, it just came from frustration. The video that I did yesterday was taken very poorly, but I stand by all those comments. But they're there for a different reason than I think the reason that people thought that I had when I made that. I think I had this in the early stages too. I thought, well, if I take money from people, then the biggest fear for me, and maybe I'm just projecting this, is my biggest fear was if I accepted people's help in form of money, then that means that I actually have to win. Which, and the scary part for me was trying to become the best version of myself that would actually have the ability to win. Because I don't know if I have the capability to be halfway decent. I don't know if I have the capability to change, get better, live up to the occasion. I'm not very good at it. I don't think I'm very good at most of the things that I do in life. Just looking at Lewis right now is making me feel agitated and on edge. Yeah, I could use some rest at some point. Is there any real proof that Pirates Discord organized fake signatures as sabotage? Anytime something like this goes somewhat viral, I assume everything that I hear on the internet is a lie until I hear otherwise. It's usually just... Who's got fuzzy audio? Probably me. Is this the house where the wind broke a door? Yes, I have a new door now, though. I mean, I could have easily fixed that door. I get it. It was just a meme. Like that was actually one of the few things in the house that actually would have been easily fixable, unlike the rest of this fucking mess. Headache after jog. Yeah, I did the whole thing where it's like my fever's down to 98.9 instead of 98.6. I can go for a run. It's like, no. You wait 3 days. You wait 3 days. That's the smart thing to do. I always do the fucking stupid thing to do because I'm Louis Rossmann. You ever see that episode of The Simpsons with Frank Grimes? Remember the episode of The Simpsons with Frank Grimes? He's like, I don't have to do that because I'm Homer Simpson. Oh, caution, high voltage. I don't have to do that because I'm Homer Simpson. I don't have to be smart because I'm Louis Rossmann. I'm going to get some more soup, and then I'm going to come back and read chat, because I actually don't have much else that I think to do with my day. My office is wrecked. My house is overflowing with water. I'm going to go get myself some soup. Maybe fill it up with the shit from the floor. Be right back. Here's some nice soup. Excuse me. Do you think game dev IP concerns are genuine? I think the concerns of the person I spoke to yesterday were genuine. I mean, that video came out like absolute dog shit. The entire time I was listening to it, I'm just like, I want to go to sleep. I'm dead tired. I want to go to sleep. So I had a conversation with him earlier that went infinitely better than the actual one that I recorded. This is why being a privacy advocate sucks. I actually wish that I recorded all my calls and that I recorded the first conversation I had with him, because it literally went over everything exactly the way that I wanted it to. And then, and then I had the conversation I had yesterday. But is what it is. Oh my. Oh, that's some soup right there. That is some being sick soup. Fuck my life. Fuck my life. What if is Ross vegan? I don't know if Ross is. Rossmann is not. I was vegan for 10 years. Not 10 years. I was vegan for 5 years. Blackberry, you want to jump up and get some tofu? You want some tofu, Blackberry? You want some tofu, my little obligate carnivore? Come here. Come get some tofu. I would have spoken to the pirate software guy a year ago. He just didn't really want to talk about any of these things. Thank you for the 5,000 Ars Technicas. Ars, wow, that's too much. Thank you. Oh, this soup is pretty horrible. I'm a bad cook. Come here. This breaks my heart. You see how Blackberry jumped up, but she kind of lost her balance a little bit? That's because she's 16 years old, and she has her and Mr. Clinton both have a degenerative spine, bone disease. Degenerative bone disease in their spine. I hate seeing that. It kills me. Little kitty. So I got one of those cat trees with like the scratchers and the levels, and I put it right next to my desk so that Mr. Clinton can use it. And one of the things that happened after I did that is Mr. Clinton goes out of his way to never use it. I'm not kidding. He never uses it. He looks at it and he's like, "Fuck you, I'm still a cat." And he jumps onto my desk the hard way. He's gonna do that till the day he dies. We're doing letters to Lewis lightning round now. Oh boy. Oh dear. You're such a cool dude, man. No, I'm not. I'm just a bum. Let's see. Oh boy. Oh my, how many letters do we have here? Roman report. Idea. Oh, okay. There didn't seem to be a ton. Did he see this one? What is this one? Holy crap. If you deserve 0, then give this to Ross. Dust 514 shout out again. I know it's not coming back. 300. Thank you. Yeah, the donations on this stream go to me, not Ross Scott, but I sent over 2844. I forget why that number is a special number. I sent 2,844, but that number is in the tip of my tongue for it as mattering for something. Why? Why does 2844 matter? I know 2448 matters, but why does 2844 matter? Huh. Stop Killing Games not over yet. He had fraudulent signatures. Yeah, that sucks. We'll see. I hope he didn't have fraudulent signatures. Have you tried getting to chiropractor to relieve some of the cat pain from the... I didn't know that they had cat chiropractors. I do know they have cat drugs. She was getting Silencia injections. Cats can get some pretty sweet drugs. Also, she's not in the shot. This is horrible. You can't have the kitty not in the shot. This is her channel. One moment. This is absolutely unacceptable. If she only knew. If the cat is in the shot. kitty. We just want everybody to see how pretty you are. Clinty! 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 Come back! Shit, I don't need this anymore. What am I wearing this for? Clinton, come on! Jump! 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 Kitty? 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 Psst, psst. Yeah, that is a gorgeous view. Yes, my house is like my relationships. Beautiful view, garbage foundation, and very unstable. Yes, I chose my house the way I choose my romantic partners. Yes, yes. What if an indie dev wanted to completely shut down their online game while users had the opportunity to know this before any point of subscription payment? One moment. Shitty soup. I'm actually starting to feel a little bit better, so the soup is working. That becomes an interesting discussion, because let's say you have a game that's a service. Like, they just advertise it as a service. You just pay $20 a month and you get to access the game. What makes that game, and this is what I think the software developer is going on about. Let's say you have a game that's $20 a month. Or $5 a month. And I don't know many games like this. I don't play games. Let's say you had $5 a month for a game. And they eventually turn the game off. What makes that different from Gmail? So there is that argument of, well, if this applies to games, why not apply it to the rest? Because you can buy a copy of Outlook. I think back in the day, you could buy Outlook, and it's your program. You can download Thunderbird, and you have an email client. But the application that runs in your browser when you use Gmail, there's this, because there's two different services. There's the service as in IMAP, the service as in I'm connecting to an IMAP email server, and I could use any email client I want. And then there's the actual Gmail client that's running in my browser. What makes that different from the live service game? And that's where I could understand somebody saying, well, that's where I could understand somebody saying this is kind of a foot in the door for just destroying the concept of client server architecture, where the person who is the proprietor of it retains proprietary access to the server. I understand that argument. Gmail is not sold as a perpetual license. I was talking about the idea of if it was of a game that was sold as not a perpetual license. To be clear, that was where I was wishy-washy in the original video that I did on Pirate software last year. Let's see, where's Pirate responds to harsh criticism of Pirate? Where is this video? Wrong thing on screen. That's not it. What the fuck? God, ever since I switched to Pipewire, it always chooses the wrong fucking window. It drives me nuts. Why am I using Pipewire? In Wayland. Everything just became slower and more of a pain in the dick. Yeah, so in this video, I was going over that around 17 minutes, which is, I originally thought that this did not apply to a live service game, but I also didn't realize that because my original thought when I was doing this video Which, how did this get to almost 1 million views? Jesus Christ. But most of when I was reading the initiative originally, when it said it was invoking something with regards to possessions, I was also thinking of a live service game the way that Pirate Software had described it. As a live service game means you pay a monthly fee to access the game, and when you're done, the game goes away. I wasn't thinking of live service game in terms of I paid $40 for it, and then it stops working at some point. Because those are different degrees, right? If I pay $40 for a game and then the game stops working at some point, you're a bastard. You just deserve to get tossed right over my balcony. There's no. Whereas if you have a game that you pay $5 a month to use, again, like I don't like that. I would never fucking pay for that. Like I would never in a million years choose to pay for that. It's not my cup of tea, but like it's a different kind of scumbaggery. You should read Against Intellectual Property by Kinsella. I actually did read Against Intellectual Property by Kinsella. He makes a lot of very interesting arguments. I mean, one of them, let me just flip something here. It's been a long time. Well, it's been a long time since I read that, but I do remember one of the arguments being, for instance, if you have E equals MC squared and you have an algorithm that's used for a codec, or if you have math, right? If somebody comes, a mathematical formula can't be patented, but like a codec can, or a scientific principle can't be patented, or E equals MC squared can't be, but which is doing more use for society? Roku is allowed to patent the concept of having advertisements that are injected into the video stream while you're watching video. Like, that's insane. So you can patent that, but you can't patent the other stuff. What is and what is not allowed to be patented? What is and isn't protected as intellectual property? Damn, is that Lake Travis? Yes, it is. Yes. It's a gorgeous view. I really do love it. I appreciate it. If this house were not a steaming pile of A1230s, this house is kind of like the A1237 MacBook Air of houses, but that's my view. So I just tolerate it, and I accept that it's a never-ending project. But everything, the water leaked all over the inside of the house because the mortar work on the outside was completely crumbling and horribly patched. And I patched it just enough until I found somebody I could trust to do it. That fucked up the flooring, fucked up the windows. The electrical wiring is completely dog shit. You could see that I pulled out outlets when I moved here, and some of these outlets, like the wire's not even screwed in to the terminal. And it would look burned, but it wasn't even fucking screwed into the terminal. I can't even begin to go over all the shit that was fucked up in this place when I moved here. But it's a right. I'm practicing my right to repair, right? It's a good house to practice my right to repair. I am the type of person that would much rather buy something broken and fix it so that I have access to something I couldn't afford otherwise, rather than buying something that works. And admittedly, I should not have done that with a house because I don't know jack shit about all this stuff. Or I should have started with something that was a little bit simpler. But the intellectual property thing. Yeah, let me bring that book up again, because Stephen Kinsella brings up a lot of interesting points in that book. I met him at a party 3 years ago too. He's a really cool guy. I didn't have a lot of time to talk to him. Because there were some very interesting arguments in this. And I know that I don't have to pirate the book because based on his belief system, I have a feeling I'll be able to find it online for free. But yeah, he was also going over the idea you can trademark or patent or Roku's idea with advertising, but I can't do that to a recipe. Why? Juicy. It was around page 13 in this that it got into the good stuff the last time I read it. The argument against utilitarianism, the argument that it isn't even, that intellectual property law doesn't benefit much even if it is a... Oh yeah, the brain fog is back. Ugh. Need more soup. Some water. Oh, the killer argument in that. The whole idea that, the idea behind protection of property. You know what? I made notes on this book when I read it like 5 or 10 years ago, didn't I? Let's see, do I have those notes still? It would take me longer to find them than it would to even freaking. Anyway. Yeah, I remember there being something in that book on the idea of, wow, I brain farted again. I still can't believe that I actually said battle initiative. Like I wasn't trying to meme. I wasn't trying to be a president with Alzheimer's. I was being a right to repair advocate with Alzheimer's. I actually said battle initiative. Never living that one down. That's why I don't make fun of Joe Biden too much for that stuff. 50. I'm already doing it 36, but he's doing it 82. Imagine when I'm 82. I'll be lucky if I get to 40. I had an idea on the tip of my tongue, and I lost it. Oh, with property. The whole concept behind protecting it is because it is scarce. If you take away my property, I can no longer use it. But with intellectual property, you haven't hurt mine by basis of using it. You using the idea has not robbed me of the ability to use the idea, nor has it made my idea any worse. If you use my idea, I can still use my idea. It doesn't hurt my idea. It doesn't hurt my implementations of my idea. Yeah, Stephen Kinsella has a good points in that book. And when I get my IQ back above room temperature and I'm feeling better, I would like to read it again. Where is your board repair video live streamed? I have about 10 years of... I think I have like 7 years of board repair videos on YouTube. Games are considered an art form. Gmail is not. Art should be preserved as cultural heritage. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Okay, if art should be preserved as cultural heritage... there is an art to computer programming. Because there is the art of computer science or the art of computer programming. A lot of computer programmers who are exceptionally good at what they do would consider it an art form. The way that you perform certain things, the way you write certain things. There's an art to it because you have to be a creative person, not just a technical person, to be in one of the top 0.1% of programmers. Also, what defines art is insanely blurry. I mean, you have like all the modern art shit or... If I throw a bunch of paint at this piece of glass, I can call that art. It's creative. Little red splashes represent the way my brain felt for the past week. You missed the talk with Ross. Yes, but you can rewind it. That's the great part. We need to preserve Gmail for the generations to come. Most coders I've worked with have the artistic skills of a toddler finger painting. If you're talking about maybe making music or you're talking about art in terms of being able to draw, that's one thing. But I'm making the argument that programming in and of itself is a creative endeavor and there is an artistic element to it. Good morning. How was your day? Been better, but we'll get better. I'm alive, so I'm a happy guy. Best effort doesn't mean anything. So a business will tell you that was my best effort. If the business has gone belly up, do you really think they could honor that? Here's an interesting one for you. Here's an interesting fucking malicious compliance right here. You know how movies are put together? With movies, a separate corporation is opened up for every production. What if a company opened up a separate company for each video game? And then when they sunsetted their video game, they just got rid of the company. and then the company was gone and there was nothing to find. That would be a very interesting malicious compliance. Math is not art. No, math is math. I think computer programming is an art that involves math. Now, if you're, I think that there is an art to how you put things together. The art of computer science. Will this be saved on your channel? Sure, it will be. I saw Mr. Rossmann eating pudding. Pudding? I fucking wish. This is a ginger, honey, carrots, peas, tofu, and some other nasty shit. Vegetable broth. Big time YouTuber Louis Rossmann complaining about his free indoor swimming pool. Yes. At least your landlord does something about problems now. True. I'll never forget John Grossbart. If I made this place any nicer, you couldn't afford it. If I made this place any nicer, you couldn't afford it. In 1979, when I opened the studio, I would always walk to the end of the block with no more than 75 cents, just enough to get myself pizza and a drink, because 50% chance when I go to the end of the block to get the pizza, I would no longer have the 75 cents. Therefore, if I lose everything in my wallet, I've only lost 75 cents. He was a funny guy. I miss John Grossbart. I miss the 2010s, honestly. 2010s were a fun time. I have seen a lot of people who don't know a lot about how sausage is made being extremely vocal about what is possible or not. I get your point. Are you going to interview any more developers? I'd love to talk to more people. Yes, I would like to talk to more people. Absolutely. There's one I have in mind already. What do you think about letting people in the industry talk about possibilities? I think people in the industry are going to talk regardless of whether I let them. I don't have authority over people. I don't even have authority over my kitty. I don't have authority over my kitty. Will Ross now start focusing on making a longer document addressing the vagueness of the petition now that it passed? You can start addressing concern, help people understand. I hope so. I hope he... I mean, my thought on him being more involved, I think I made it clear in the video I did 1 or 2 days ago. Hope you're doing well. Can you do another RFK Jr. impression? No. I'm actually happy that my voice is getting a little better. The main point is your poor business model is not my problem. Yeah, I try to understand things, and I try to work to understand why things are the way they are, because the real red pill that I've noticed as I get older and in my mid-30s is not that it's not that everything is some fucked up giant conspiracy. The reality is everything is the way it is for a reason. And I try to understand that reason. The reason I do that is because my natural populist bias is to just say, it's all fucked, it's all corrupt, blow it up, right? And like, this person is evil, here's the villain, here's the good guy. My brain defaults to that. So I always try to fight that. I'm trying to fight that more as I get older. And at the very least, I try to recognize my bias for what it is, so that I could be better informed and better at what I do. Whether or not it's working, I try. This is some pretty bad soup. I'm a shit cook. But I think I sound better now than I did at the beginning of the video. Do I sound better now than the beginning of the video, or worse? I will let you all decide that. If I sound better, I'm going to keep eating the soup. If I do not sound better, I'll find something else. What's to stop a large corporation from stealing a small business's idea? You know, this is very interesting because this actually goes back to Aaron's whole argument on open source and his entire... So when I worked for Fudo, worked there for almost 3 years, he had a very interesting idea on open source that was different from a lot of the community. His idea is open source is you see the source code, whereas the community would think No. That's source available. Open source means I can do what I want with it. I can redistribute it. I can fuck with it. I can make my own copy of shit. I can use your program and my own commercial program, make money off of it. And his idea was, he wanted the idea of it to be, well, you can see my source code and you can see my idea, but if Google wishes to use FFmpeg for YouTube, you don't get to make $24 billion a year and then give me 3 interns for the Google Summer of Code. Like, nah, that's not, fuck that. That's not a fair fucking exchange of value. And you have to come talk to us and have a conversation. I imagine here, when it comes to what would stop a large corporation from stealing a smaller business's idea, there's licensing, there's intellectual patent. Licensing and patents are separate things. But when it comes to stealing an idea, at the end of it, this is an argument that's horribly unpopular, is that it's, in my experience, it's not the idea, it's the implementation that matters. The idea is very often not the thing that gets you ahead. It's the implementation of the idea. And the implementation of the idea does not have much to do with the intellectual property itself. Most people IQ is actually in the double digits. Yeah, but mine's room temperature. Like Celsius room temperature. At least today. Lewis, thoughts on my New York City mayoral election? You know, I saw the guy that won, the one that trounced Cuomo in the Democratic primary. I noticed that he had a thing where he said if he wins, he wants to open some sort of small business rules critique thing where it would be essentially, it was like the Elon's version of Doge, except not a scam, to go through and find all the things that are fucking with small businesses in the regulatory process and have them kind of work on fixing that. If that job were open and that job were offered to me, I would move back to New York City, I would take that job, I would do it for free, and I would do it with pride every fucking day. But that's never going to happen. That would literally never happen. I think it would be a really cool idea to do the non-scam version of Doge for the regulatory process for a small business in that state, in New York City. I would do that. I would take that job. The conflict of interest is gone because my business isn't in New York City anymore. MIT license does allow profit, though. Bad example commentary. I'm not talking about a license not allowing for profit. I'm saying that if you release a specific piece of open source software and Google decides, that's a really cool library, let me use that as part of my proprietary system to make tens of billions of dollars a year, they don't have to pay you. And I'm saying that Aaron's point, which I understand, even if I thought like the source available versus open source thing was the giant quagmire, is that I understand the idea of, I don't want to allow this multi-billion-dollar company to make billions and billions of dollars off my work while providing me with an intern for Google Summer of Code. He said he wanted to tax white neighborhoods more. Literally no respect for him. If you live in New York City, you do not have great candidates to vote for mayor. I don't think I'd vote for him either. The only time I ever voted in an election in New York City or in New York State, I didn't want to puke, was when I voted for Larry Sharpe. I like Larry Sharpe, but I also don't know if he actually said that with wanting to tax white neighborhoods more, because you're on YouTube, and I would have to Google that to figure out if you're lying or misinterpreting what he said, which totally never happens in politics in a YouTube chat. But aside from that guy, let's say that mayor, or the one that won, I forget his name, Mamdani, let's say he was the biggest piece of shit alive, right? Let's just paint him as the biggest piece of shit. I do not change anything that I said about taking that job of working to that position for going through the small business regulatory process in New York City, Department of Consumer Affairs type of stuff, and figuring out what clogs up the works, what makes things difficult and shitty for small businesses, and working to fix it. I would work for. I don't care if I hate my boss in that situation because I'm not working for my boss. I'm working for the people. I'm not in New York City anymore, but if I can make it so that another business inside of New York City does not get so aggravated at the entire process, they say, fuck this, I'm going to tip over the monopoly board, try my luck in another part of the country, I would do that. I would do that. I feel like I owe it to the city. I would have never started the business that I did if not in New York. I mean, I was working out of a park. I had a work out of a park. I put up Craigslist ads and pull tab signs, and I grew to a business that had 12 or 16 employees. I had no money. I didn't get financing. Nobody loaned me. It wasn't like I was going to the bank and getting real business loans or anything. And I got to a business with 12 or 16 people that then grew to a channel with over 1 million subscribers, and then all the right to repair movement shit. Like, all that shit started from me working out of a park in a city that allowed that to happen, because you have 8.5 million people in a space the size of Knoxville, Tennessee, which means you can get a lot of stuff done. I wouldn't be doing it for Mamdani. I wouldn't be doing it for the mayor. I wouldn't be doing it for the politicians. I'd be doing it for the other people. I'd be doing it for the me of 2008 and 2009. I'd be doing it because there's another person just like me in that state that may start something just the way I did. They just start rubbing two sticks together and seeing what they can produce for themselves, working out of a park, sitting there freezing, waiting for their clients to show up. I want that. Yeah. It's about paying it forward. I don't give a fuck what the mayor says. It's not for him, you know? It's not for him. Has New York City hit you up with anything lately, like some unpaid taxes? I'm not kidding. I actually got a form saying I did not fill out my sales tax paperwork, and it's like, how many times do I need to forfeit this fucking certificate of authority before you leave me alone? What are the reasons that my business does not file sales tax paperwork anymore? Maybe it's because I resigned and submitted a revocation of my certificate of authority over 2 fucking years ago. Certificates of authority is what you need to get to do sales tax. Based on all your knowledge with the struggle for right to repair, harder a fight you think it would win do you think it would be in Virginia? I am not sure how hard it would be in Virginia. Virginia being the internet capital of the world means businesses cannot leave. Can you explain what you mean by internet capital of the world? Because I didn't know that about Virginia. I'm highly ignorant in a number of different things, and that's one of them. If Google releases FFmpeg, what's that stupid noise? I didn't become a wokey for plastic bags until I had a fish pond. And every now and then I'll hear some gargling from my pump and it's a fucking plastic bag. People, plastic pricks trying to kill my fish. I'll figure it out later. If any of you want to see my fish, if you guys want to see a stream, I'm going to show you the best stream that you can get. Where is this? Here we go. Are you ready? Are you ready to see something that's going to rock your world? Look at that. That's my fishy. Only 2 people watching my fishy. That's actual. I want to cry looking at that. Wow. Nobody likes my fishy. Yeah. I'm going to make sure that's in chat. Those are my little fishy. Aren't they cute? Aren't they cute? They're very cute, aren't they? They're adorable. I try to find the positive in almost everything, and I think the one thing that is going to come positive out of the complete destruction of my house over the past few days is that it made me have to stream on my balcony, and this is actually pretty nice. I've spent almost no time on this balcony since I moved here, which is really a complete fucking waste. It is quite beautiful. It's a nice breeze. It was raining today, which almost never happens here. What's the name of your wireless keyboard? This is the best wireless keyboard that was ever made. It has a horrible flaw, though. This is the Logitech K350, otherwise known as Logitech for some of you people that pronounce it wrong. It's the Logitech K as in cat, K as in cat, 350. Now the problem, the thing that I love about this keyboard, and no sponsor, just truth, is that it's one of the most comfortable things if you're sitting on a chair like this. So see the palm rest over here? Most keyboards do not have this type of serious palm rest. So if I'm sitting on a recliner, I don't have a desk. This is gorgeous. There's no keyboard that I've felt that's like it. And it has a really nice layout. I have good volume keys at the top that are real, dedicated, bulky volume keys, and the entire keyboard just feels beautiful. Now the problem with this keyboard is that the wireless receiver and transmitter for this is a complete piece of dog shit. So like, I have this thing right here, right? I have an extension cord. I have to put this right next to me. And there are some times over the course of the stream that you may have seen me lifting the keyboard because if this side is not up and like right next to this, it doesn't fucking work. I've owned several of these keyboards. It's happened to me in happened to me in 2 different houses and 2 different apartments across different computers, different everything. Where's Ross? Ross left half an hour ago. Watch the first hour and 30 minutes of the stream. It's the worst. And I've tried other wireless keyboards and mice, and they all work. I've tried even this mouse. This mouse is using the exact same receiver, and it works. It's just this fucking keyboard. I don't know what it is, but they suck. That particular thing sucks. And I can't find a wired version of this. So, but this is still my favorite keyboard. So I will have my USB cable in my little dongle, and I'll put it right next to me while I'm working so that I could use this keyboard because it's one of the best feeling ones I've had. The new keyboards, oh, they're such shit. I've tried to look at the new keyboards that they have and fuck these things. These are horrible. Look at this. Look at this garbage. What the fuck is this? This is hipster shit. Hipster shit. That's the worst hipster shit. All of this is just, ugh. I don't know what the fuck I'm gonna do with this. What is this, an Apple keyboard? This is uncomfortable. I've tried this one. This thing is just absolute dog shit. Fuck this. I don't know how anybody could ever type on this. This is garbage. This one over here, MX Keys. Again, this is where's my palm rest, bro? Where's my palm rest? This one over here, mechanical. This is they're going for the trend because people like the cherry keys and all that, so that this is chasing the trend and copying what other people have already done better. This looks like a tablet keyboard or something. No. This looks like it belongs on a fucking iMac from 1999. Again, more mechanical. Yeah, fuck all this. I want my K350. Okay, they don't make it anymore because it's good. I love my K350. I despise that it's gone. It's not appreciated anymore by people. Yeah, if you want to buy a good keyboard, you can't buy this anymore. I think Logitech is fucked up so much as a company with these things, but I think they realized that people like it, so that's why so they stopped making it. Yeah, if you want to buy this, I can't buy this, but they'll recommend me that you might also like a Wave. No, look at this. Oh, it looks like this thing is separate and it has a kickstand over here. Why? This does not look the same at all. What is this? What is this? Why don't I type like this, not like this. I don't want to do this. That's weird. I type I'm used to this. Don't change my shit on me. I have a keyboard that's shaped like this, and when I type it, it fucks with my hand. You'd think because your hands are like this that having the keyboard shaped like that works, but it really doesn't. Because I wind up having to poke my hands up like this to reach over things, and it's just my veins wind up popping out of my hands, and I can see them when I use those keyboards. It's a conspiracy theory against you in particular. Indeed it is. Fuckers. Logitech just makes landfill nowadays. Pretty much. Remember the days of the Z680? Z680. How many people here was this your first home hi-fi? Remember this shit? Remember this? Where are the old people at? Remember this? Yeah. This was the peak. This is back when Google had "don't be evil" in their terms. Those are the days, bro. That brings it back. Those are in my garage somewhere. In a box inside of a box inside of a box. How many people rocking the Logitech Z680? Where do you and Linus stand? I'm 5'6". I think he's about an inch taller than me, maybe 5'7". Just glue the USB receiver under the keyboard. Nah. Microsoft ergonomic keyboard. Oh. Use better AA batteries. Bro, I've tried that. I tried Energizer, Duracell, Rayovac, rechargeable. No. You know, at one point I actually tried using my DC power supply. I attached my DC fucking power supply with jumper cables to the damn keyboard, and I was slowly turning the power up and down with a fake battery pack just to see if maybe it needs a little less, maybe it needs a little more. I did everything. I love this thing. I tried so hard to make this thing work perfectly. And I started my own business recently. Hit me hard how tough it is to own a small business today, but I'm happier being my own boss even with all the stress. Not for everyone though. Love your content. Thank you. I hope you have a lot of success. If you're a new small business, is a good book that may help you. There's this guy that wrote a book on running a small business, and the idea with his book is he's not telling you how to run a business as a small business owner. He's telling you how to run a book as a collections agent, who is usually there at the end when a business owes a bunch of people money because they fucked everything up. It's a pretty cool book. 10 Mistakes Businesses Make and How to Avoid Them by Roger Mendelsohn. A lot of it may seem kindergartenish in nature or very obvious, but what's obvious to others is not always obvious to me. That's something I've learned over the years. I love your fishy. Thank you. I'm kind of sad at what a fail that channel is. I do want to bump up the numbers on my fish channel. I don't tell people to like subscribe and like or click the bell or any of that. I haven't done that shit in 13 years. But I will do that for my fishy channel. I will do that for the fishy. The fishy are at Rossmann Koi Group. Yeah, it's Rossmann. There's a lot of goldfish in there, so technically it's false advertising. It's not full truth in advertising because there's a lot of... It does have koi. There are koi in the pond. It's just the koi don't have sex at the same rate as the as the goldfish. The goldfish fuck like crazy, but I don't think the koi have sex very often. I think they're more Texas conservative. So I have the same number of koi that I did before. It's just I have infinitely more goldfish, and they just keep reproducing. Are you and Erica okay? I'm doing all right. I believe that relationship ended in early 2022. I talk to her from time to time. She's a good person. She has her ups and she has her downs, like everybody. But we talk from time to time. I hope she continues to do well. She's a really good person. Let's see. Where are the cats? One kitty is sitting under the camera over there. I don't know where the other kitty is. Little Barry. Little Barry, what you doing over there? Why you pretending you can't hear me? Come over here. Ignore me. Pretend I don't exist and sit in the wrong place. Good girl, you listen to me. That's what it's like being a cat owner. Search up the Optimus Maximus keyboard. The fuck is that? Keyboard developed by the Art Lebedev Studio. Each of its keys is a display which can dynamically change to adapt to... Oh, fuck that. That sounds like it's going to be expensive. I don't need that shit, man. I'm fine with my keyboard the way it is, bro. Just give me my K350 with a real transmitter. Lewis, what about Steam? It won't last forever. Thousands of games will eventually be killed. That was something that the developer mentioned yesterday, actually. He said, like, I'm very surprised that people that are as pro-freedom as they are kind of as okay with Valve and Steam and the DRM in there as they are. And you're not... true. You're not wrong. You are not wrong on that one, sir. But... yeah. It's a good thing to shine some light on some of the issues within the gaming industry. I'm afraid the lack of lobbyists and the vague language may be of more damage than good for SKG initiative, Stop Killing Games initiative. I think that language can be tightened up over time, and the lobbying thing, again, that just comes down to... that comes down to how far they want to go with it. I read that 10 Mistakes in Business book about 12 years ago, so I forgot most of its content. However, I remember at the time thinking, wow, this is really awesome. My supply company would have not gone to shit if I had read this beforehand. With a lot of things, I remember the feelings without... I remember how I felt when I read it, or I remember the overarching idea without remembering the specifics. I read that book 12 years ago. I don't remember most of it. But I remember thinking at the time that I read it, man, I really wish I had read this stuff before starting that damn supply company. I stepped away from my headphones and just assumed this was an archive stream that I'll play after the Rossmann review. Didn't you have a headache? I did. I have a slightly less of a headache now, though. I had a big one when I started it. I had a horrible headache yesterday. That entire video conversation that I did yesterday, I think for half of it, I was just sitting there going, can I go to sleep now? Not because it was boring, but just because I felt like complete shit. Oh, it's hard for me to switch tasks. So when I get started doing something, it's really hard for me to switch. So now that I've started, I'm in stream mode. And in order to stop the stream, I'd have to start doing something else. So it's easier for me to just sit here and keep doing this until there's some sort of negative pressure that causes me to realize I have to do something else. It's a character flaw of mine. I'm not so much a workaholic so much as it is if once I start working, it's really hard for me to I'm very good at staying here and going this way. It's very hard for me to like pivot or turn or change lanes. I kind of stay in the lane that I'm in. So yeah, you caught me there. You caught me. Also, this allows me to procrastinate the clusterfuck inside my house, which is what I'm working on right now. So don't distract me from that. I love what you're doing. I'm glad people like you exist. That's a scary one. No. I am not always particularly happy people like me exist. But thank you. If there was a genuine safety risk to a product being modified, would you be able to behave with the company locking it down proprietary components if they were readily available at a reasonable price? What is the safety risk to the product being modified? If I modify the brakes in my truck and I replace them with a different brand of brake pads, but those brake pads that I got were maybe a defective set and now it doesn't stop, does that mean that that Ford should lock me down from being able to replace the brake pads in my truck? What you're saying would make sense It makes sense if you're proposing it in a vacuum devoid of the last 50 to 250 years of freedom. Because when you phrase it like that, I'm like, I would be prompted to go, well, okay, you got a point there. Okay, fine. But then I look back at just a basic example like the Ford F-150, or just the truck. And then it's hard when I look back at that example. It's hard for me to do that. People opening microwaves is one of the leading causes of death for electronics hobbyists. I've never opened a microwave before, or thought to open a microwave before. How is Texas bureaucracy now that you've been there for a while? Oh, Texas has its own brand of fucked up stupid shit, but it's a brand of fucked up stupid shit that I've only dealt with for the past 2.5 years, so it's not as aggravating. Yes, having to put the 10 Commandments in public schools is like, yes, I get it. It's fucking stupid. Why does a kindergartner need to see "Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife" on the wall? Like, really? Is that like that? Great, you solved the pressing fucking problem there. I get it. It's stupid. There's a lot of stupid, but I compare that to getting a letter in the mail every other day, every other fucking day, to get punished for something that I didn't do. And it's like, I'll take this clusterfuck over that clusterfuck. Are you all upset about the big beautiful bill? I sure am. I don't like that you're using the language of the person who made it. Yeah, don't buy into the PR. There was one part of that was interesting. It was the one part I really wish I had more in my brain right now. It was the one going over. What is it? Like a judge has to collect something. A judge has to collect something when they're ruling on a particular case. Or if they hadn't collected this going back all these different years, the rulings could be considered not valid. It was a really interesting way of just kind of, Ross, you are not prepared. Y-O-U-R-E, mofo. Y-O-U-R-E. It was a very interesting piece in there. Man, where is this? I had a screenshot at some point. I have a bookmarks folder, and I also have like a folder on my computer of all the interesting fucked up shit over the past 5 months. And it's like, it's growing, and I don't organize it as well as I should, so it's hard for me to bring this stuff up later. Where is the link? How to link to this? Thank you, Justin. Thank you very much. Where did I put this damn thing? Yeah, there were a lot of very interesting, not great things in that bill. What? It was... Man, I'm trying to remember the name of it. I just have to admit that at this point in today, my brain is only at 30% capacity, and that I should give up. What was the... I think I had the screenshot of that particular thing I'm referring to on my phone. Aha, here we go. Let's see. I didn't take a look to see if this made it into the end of it. Screenshot. 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 Section 70302, restriction of funds. No court of the United States may use appropriated funds to enforce a contempt citation for failure to comply with an injunction or temporary restraining order if no security was given when the injunction or order was issued pursuant to Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 65C, whether issued prior to, on, or subsequent to the date of enactment of this section. Let me see if I can still find that section. Is that still in there? That was an interesting one. It seemed like a very sneaky way to really fuck with federal court's ability to enforce a law. I'm curious if that made it in. I haven't been following it. I do not follow as many things. Yeah, did this make it in? This was an interesting, scary one, because it doesn't really make sense when you first read it. It's like, well, who cares about that? It doesn't sound scary, but the implications of it were quite scary. And if I had my brain, I'd be able to explain it right now. Now, going forward, I'm sure that many courts would ask for a security of like 5 cents or $1 or something silly. By the time I go to edit the stream title Blue Freaker, I will be likely be out of here or end the stream. But to find that browser window. You know what, Blue Freaker? It actually kind of is time to get out of here. I do have to... that was the thing I was thinking of. Yeah, time for me to get out of here. I need to take a nap. Hope I wake up tomorrow with no more fever. If I wake up with no fever tomorrow, I'll be a happy guy. Alright. Thank you for coming by. See you all later. Wonder what his number's up to now, by the way. What are we up to? Okay, who the fuck is responsible for this number? Which one of you pricks is responsible for this number? Can we get... I'm just gonna see if something else happens before the end of the stream. This is to Ross Scott. 6927. Oh, you're kind of close to a certain number there. We're close to a specific number. Does anybody know which number I'm thinking of? $12 and 64 cents away, maybe? $12, 66 cents. Anybody got $12, 66 cents? $12, 66 cents. Okay. Before I leave, I'll leave when somebody gives $12 and 66 cents to this. No, that's too immature. I'll see you later.